Hey, Final Fantasy fans. Just want to give you a quick heads up that this episode will contain spoilers from up through Chapter 5, the cruise ship chapter of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but not beyond that, as well as the equivalent scenes from the original Final Fantasy VII, movie spoilers for Shutter Island and A Beautiful Mind, and a quick fight scene from Final Fantasy XVI. If you'd like, you can check the episode description for spoiler timestamps. I know that in past conversations, you've said you don't love the humor in this game, but it sounds like you bought into this. And so
one thing sold it for me. Just one thing is what sold it for me.
Was it the moonwalk?
Yes.
I knew it! Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Final Fantasy Files, where we discuss all things Final Fantasy, from Queen's Blood to Regina to necrotic entities. My name is Jolie Hales.
And I'm Ernest De Leon.
And today we're going to dive deep into Chapter 5 of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is the cruise ship chapter. And it's also a chapter that I'm sure really excites you, Ernest, because there's something in this chapter that I've heard in the past that you might like a little bit.
Just a little bit. And actually, it turned out this chapter was amazing on multiple levels. But yes, having so much Queen's Blood is great. But the other reason is, you may not know this, but I actually used to participate in card-based game tournaments.
That does not surprise me at all. Like you...
And then the cruise ship and like the whole, I loved it, obviously, but yes, there's a lot to unpack in this episode.
And before we go any further into this discussion, we should also say that we will be spoiling Final Fantasy VII Rebirth up through the end of Chapter 5, but we're not going to spoil beyond that in this game yet, so you can actually keep pace with us if you haven't played it already, or if you're watching it late. I'm hoping this game comes out on PC and then people can actually, because we're getting these episodes out as fast as we can, but obviously they take some time to edit.
Exactly. So if you didn't know that Barret dies because Red ate him, then you found out now.
Oh my gosh. Left field.
That was so good too. Like
so
people are going to be like, what?
But see, now people know that didn't happen. So you kind of spoiled by process of elimination that that's not a thing that happened. So apologies to everybody.
Could you imagine what that dog would look like if he ate a man like 4 times his size?
Oh my gosh.
He would be like one of those pythons that ate the alligator in the Everglades.
Now I've got these weird visuals in my head thanks to you, Ernest. Like,
I'm telling you, man, the internet, it just does this to people. Like,
it totally does. It totally does. But yes, we are not going to spoil anything beyond the end of Chapter 5 for this discussion. Oh, and I should say too that by this point, as of this discussion, I finished the game weeks ago. Ernest, where are you?
I am in Chapter 6 right now. I still haven't gotten farther.
You gotta get moving, man. We got Chapter 6 to record soon.
I will have it actually I was thinking about that the other day. That's kind of like my motivation. Like if you just set a date and say, hey, we're recording this one in
then
2
you're
weeks,
like, I gotta finish that chapter.
I got it done by 2 weeks. Like,
okay, I am going on vacation for a week, so I won't be editing for like a week. So you have a week to like maybe catch up at night or something like that.
Are you going to be aboard the Shinra 8 on your vacation?
No. Is that what the boat is called?
Yeah.
It's called the Shinra 8?
Yes, the boat is called Shinra 8.
I didn't actually know that. So I know they mentioned something about it being like a repurposed Shinra ship that's now like this cruise ship, but I don't remember it being called Okay, no, I'm not. I'm going to a lake house with my siblings and nieces and nephews and stuff.
Makes sense. Yeah, that actually plays into something I want to ask later. What is this ship? And calling it the Shinra 8 isn't surprising because like, you know, they're a mega corporation. They would put their own name on something, but
well, it has Shinra written on the side of the ship too.
I think that also had something to do with like events that unfolded in the game, specifically in the cargo hold. So we'll get to that point down the, especially with JRPGs. Like you could make the argument that some things in there are just because, whatever.
Yeah.
But most of the time, a lot of the stuff, if not all of it, is like well thought out. There's a reason it exists in there.
But before, look, I had to show off my shirt. Do you like my shirt?
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome? I got it online.
Man.
It's the best shirt.
It's one of those, if you know, you know.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Someone
If
sees
you
that and they're going to
know-
be like, oh, that's an awesome shirt. You know.
If you know, you know. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because my microphone's kind of covering up the cool graphic here, I had to show that off really quick.
Yeah. Everyone else is going to be like, why does she have a picture of a cloud and a sword? I don't understand.
They're like, why is there like a stabbed cloud?
That's so awesome.
Oh, if you know, you're in the club.
Like a cloud and a sword. Is that a reference to cutting the cheese somehow? I don't understand like how
What
this
does the cloud have to do with cheese?
a cloud, like anyway.
Okay.
There's multiple interpretations for this thing here. So
And Red 8 Barret.
and Red 8 Barret. There you go.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so chapter 5, shall we? So chapter 5 it's pretty straightforward in both its storytelling and the path you take, right? So it's following the pattern I think that the developers have been going down where they're alternating chapters between kind of open world and then linear chapters.
Even the boat went on a straight path. So
Literally, yes.
There you go, too.
Right, because chapter 4 was a behemoth for me because I'm a completionist. Chapter 5, not as much. There's virtually no exploration beyond just like basic room exploration and maybe walking around the deck on the cruise ship, right? And that's kind of nice, to be honest. I actually really like the alternating of the chapters because the pace is nice for those of us who do feel like we have to do everything in the open world. Case in point, so this chapter took me about 2.5 hours to complete in full. And that's by walking around to every room and listening to like all the NPCs. Whereas chapter 4, as a completionist, took me 17 hours and 14 minutes. So that was a fun bear, nonetheless, because I guess bears can be fun. Winnie the Pooh or something. But part of the reason that chapter took me so long is because I was doing Fort Condor over and over and over and over again, because apparently, okay, I didn't know this, but when I did chapter 4, there was no patch. Now there's a patch, I found out. So March 29th, there was some patch that rolled out that actually added easier difficulty options to Fort Condor. You can actually like switch a little switch in the bottom corner. And would have been nice to have that when I played it the beginning of March. So apparently Square heard complaints from more than just me. Not that I benefited, but if I play it again, maybe I will. I don't know. But chapter 5 inversely did not have Fort Condor in it, but rather it had a Queen's Blood tournament. In fact, chapter 5 can really be divided, I would say, into kind of 3 sections. So first, there's just the intro, getting familiar with the boat section. Second, there's the Queen's Blood tournament section. And then third, there's the invading monsters section. And basically, once you check those 3 boxes, you're done with chapter 5 and you're on to chapter 6. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And I'll just say now that chapter 5 already kicks off differently than its original predecessor, than the original game. So, and the way it does that is that in Rebirth, so the ship itself in Rebirth is a cruise ship, right? It's like a vacation ship that's meant to take these vacationers to this beach town of Costa del Sol. And Costa del Sol, of course, does exist in the original game. And I think we were mentioning this, it's like, in Rebirth, they talk about it being some repurposed like Shinra warship or something like that. But either way, the vibe on this ship is totally different than the vibe in the original 7 game, right? Because in original 7, the ship is a Shinra like Navy ship. It has no vacationers. There's no like fun music or fun games. There's obviously no Queen's Blood tournament because that's not in original 7. It's just Navy and trooper personnel working on this kind of Navy ship. And since Cloud is conveniently still in his trooper uniform in the original game, he blends right in. And in the original game, this is actually the first moment where you see Aerith and Tifa in trooper uniforms, and then Barret in his sailor uniform, which they must have put on, I guess, in the original game for the sole purpose of blending in on this ship. So in Rebirth, obviously, we see that in the previous chapter, but it doesn't happen until here in the original.
Yeah, there were some disjoint things there, and I'll call one out later when we get to the point about the monsters attacking. But yeah, you're right. And the thing is, like, the first thing that came to mind was casino boat. And I know it was not a casino boat, but it just felt like a casino boat.
When you say casino boat, are you talking like just cruise ship in general or like a day cruise? Like, I don't know, because like I've been on a few different cruises with family and whatnot, and I remember Carnival Cruise Lines felt like a casino on water, and that's how I referenced it. Are you talking about like that?
That's exactly what I mean. I've never been on one of those type of cruise ships, like a Carnival or Royal Caribbean or anything like that. But I did. This was many, many years ago in one of like my first real jobs. they did like this team building event. So I was living in Texas at the time, right? And gambling is illegal there, right? So in order for you to gamble there were these casino boats. And so basically it was like a very large boat, not as big as one of those Carnival cruise lines, but about the size of the one in this game that we're talking about here in Chapter 5, right?
Was it like a day boat, or did you stay overnight on it?
No, it was a day boat.
Okay.
But it has a casino in it, obviously.
They call it a booze cruise.
Right.
Like, remember in The Office, the booze cruise episode? Yeah.
Being the kind of boss that's always trying to teach people things, sometimes you have to just be the boss of dancing.
Well, I don't watch that show, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh, wait.
I know you're going to say something
Ernest,
about this paper company.
You watch everything and you don't watch The Office? It's like the greatest show.
The humor just doesn't. See, here's the thing. My wife loves that show.
Because it's awesome.
When she would watch it, of course, I'd be around and I'd see it. And I just, like, the humor just got to me. I don't know why. But I do have a favorite character in the show, though, even though I don't like the show.
What is it?
It's Stanley.
I want to own a decommissioned lighthouse. And I want to live at the top. And nobody knows I live there. And there's a button that I can press and launch that lighthouse into space.
The way he rolls his eyes is just like, it's priceless. He's awesome. But anyway, like, it's like that. It's a big boat. It's usually like 4 floors or stories. And then they'll have like a restaurant.
Music, little dance floor.
Music with a bar. So it's the same exact thing, right? So you get on this casino boat. And the deal is it has to go out into international water.
Oh, in Texas, you mean? So that you can gamble?
Exactly. So it goes out into international water and then it pretty much just parks itself there. Like,
interesting.
As soon as they cross the international water line,
then everybody just starts slot machines.
The whole thing fires up and it's a full-on casino in there and everybody's having a good time. The drinks are flowing. And so, like, I'm not the biggest casino person. I'll go every couple of years.
Yeah,
and
they're not my thing.
They're not my thing. Again, this was a work trip. So, like, I don't know how they got this idea.
Well, that's what they do on The Office. It's a work trip there, too.
Exactly. And when we went into this Chapter 5, it reminded me so much of that boat. Just like the vibe, like the music. And I guess the tournament is kind of like a...
It's kind of casino-esque in a way. Yeah, it feels very similar.
So for me, I just like dubbed it the casino boat chapter.
Yeah, I think you described it perfectly. I think this is basically the casino boat chapter, right? Which is totally different from the original game, like we were saying, right? When it comes to the original game, you don't actually spend a lot of time on the ship in the original game. So they clearly, just like the Myth of Mine, they expanded this chapter out significantly. Also in the original game, it's worth pointing out that Rufus is on board the ship as well, and you kind of see him through a window, him and Heidegger. And since the vibe is just totally different in the original game than Rebirth, because Rebirth is casino boat and original game is standard like Navy ship, right? The music is also different. Although it's likely recognizable to you if you listen to the Rebirth music from these newer games nonetheless. It's just different scenes. So everything's just kind of done with a totally different vibe in this one.
Yeah, and one of the things I think they're trying to do, I could be wrong, but it feels like they'll like give you a chapter or two of something like this where, yeah, I know the ending was a little,
intense,
unpleasant, but they'll give you like uplifting.
Yeah, it's breathing room.
A positive vibe so that in the next chapter they can just punch you down.
Which is actually good.
They're setting you up. Yeah.
Because, as a filmmaker, I will always say that it's so essential to have a variation in tone in any story. So whether that's a game, whether that's a movie, you have to have this variation of tone, because if you play the same note, so like if you tried to be funny the whole game, it wouldn't be as funny as if you have moments that aren't funny and then funny moments. It makes the funnier moments funnier, and the lows are lower and the highs are higher when you have variation. If you play everything the same note, it doesn't matter what that note is. It's just going to get a little bit bland and mundane.
Like they're taking you up and they're taking you down on purpose.
That's good, because we will be more invested and we'll feel more emotion.
It is. The only downside to it, if I want to say it really is a downside, is like I have this like feeling, it's almost like a creeping intuition that if I have a really good, fun chapter like this one, someone's going to die the next one.
Some crap's going to hit the fan.
And it's like, oh man, I'm in for the next chapter. But that's okay. Like you said, it's good in one way, but in the other way.
But this one kind of continues that jolly vibe
into chapter
6 a little bit as well.
Especially the very, very, very last scene in this chapter, it cracked me up. So we'll get there.
Okay, I'm excited. Okay, so let's jump in to Rebirth officially. So chapter 5 is called Blood in the Water, which is pointing to what happens obviously at the end or toward the end of the chapter, right? But the chapter starts out on a far less ominous note with like some fun establishing shots of people on this vacation cruise ship, where guests apparently also include Andrea and Madam M from Walmarket.
Oh yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
So if you recall them, and Andrea, of course, was the guy who danced with Cloud at the Honeybee Inn, who that's like, I love that scene so much. It's so over the top.
And by the way, Blood in the Water, call out to another excellent cultural phenomenon from a film perspective, Jaws.
Yes.
Come on down and chum some of this shit.
Right?
Exactly.
You can't beat that. I was half expecting to hear like a motif in the music for Jaws in the background somewhere, but again, missed opportunity, right? Like you just said, Blood in the Water. Like any person who's like a fan of film and cultural history, the first thing that's going to come to their mind is Jaws.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
So on this ship, Andrea, like I said, he's here for some odd reason, but hey, why not? We also see members of our own party in these opening establishing shots. So there's Cloud, there's Barret still wearing his sailor suit. Red is mobbed by children. This is before Red eats Barret. I can't get over that.
That was another thing that kind of freaked me out a little bit, was like, you have all these kids and they like surrounded this animal.
Like, where are their parents like, oh, maybe don't touch the doggy?
They could have got bit, right? Like,
I don't think they were going for realism.
maybe this is just like a paranoia as like a parent or whatever, but you've got this animal that's like a dog, cat.
With a flame on his tail.
Like an emaciated lion with a flame for a tail. And these kids just like corner it.
And they're like, ooh, look at the doggy.
What happens when you corner a wild animal? Like, this is what I was like, oh, get away from that thing. But that was funny too. Yeah. And he's just sitting there like, oh no.
I like watching Red's reactions to children throughout the game. I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
This is also the first time that we get a first glance at Regina, who I think has kind of fun, crazy hair, right? She's that pink-haired Queen's Blood champion that everybody is apparently talking about on the boat. Like, ooh, Regina's on this ship or whatever.
Regina Connigan, the card game maven? That Regina?
I've heard of her. People say she's a prodigy, that she was beating pros on the circuit while she was still in diapers. Apparently, she's never even lost a match.
But basically, the idea of all of these different establishing shots is to not only introduce us to this new setting, because it is very new, because this isn't the same setting from original game, right? But it's also to introduce us to like this laid back, relaxing kind of feel of this casino ship, right? The developers are giving us, just like you said, they're giving us some room to breathe before some shiz hits the fan.
Yeah. Before the Titanic moment, but the ship doesn't go down.
Spoiler alert, the ship doesn't go down and everybody doesn't drown. That's probably good. And then a shark comes and eats everybody except Barret, who got eaten by Red. Yep. So at the same time, below deck, Aerith and Tifa are still in their trooper uniforms and they're whispering about boys.
I'm here if you want to talk.
They're whispering about boys, Ernest. Or at least they're starting to, and then Cloud and Barret find them. And I personally wish the guys would have shown up a bit later, because I seriously wanted to hear it straight from the girls' mouth about how they manage their emotions about both having a crush on the same guy. But
why? So what I couldn't understand, and again, this may just be me being obtuse about this, but like that conversation started off with, I want to talk about business.
Well, actually, I was kind of hoping we could talk business.
What kind of business?
You know, business.
And you got to remember that like the first thing I thought of is Remake, when the Avalanche subgroup or whatever you want to call it was all about business.
This is a one-time gig. When it's done, we're done.
So when she brings this up, I'm assuming she's talking about
you're taking it literally.
the business of Avalanche.
All
And then
right.
all of a sudden she's like, boys. And I'm like,
Boys.
really?
Boys. Oh, that kind.
This is where you took this? So again, like,
You mean you didn't want the conversation to continue?
no, I wanted it to end right then and there. I was like, I don't want to hear this. Like,
Well, it did. So you're in luck.
but then it made me question, like, I didn't realize that this was considered business. Like, of course, it's probably like tongue-in-cheek business or whatever.
Well, yeah.
But it was just one of those where I was like, come on.
Like, this isn't business.
Had they just said like, oh, I want to talk about boys or whatever, granted, I wouldn't have wanted to hear it, but that would have been like different. But the way she came at it from like, I want to talk about business, I thought it was something serious. Then it went into that. that.
Yeah, it's so true. But when does Aerith ever talk about actual business? Like, she's all emotion and heart.
Exactly. So although it probably would have been funny to hear the whole like
she starts going into like tactical execution strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, yeah, Aerith.
So here's how we're gonna off Rufus. Oh man, I would have loved that. But like, no,
they're talking about boys.
Luckily it got interrupted and then we move on.
Yeah. I don't really know what the point of that moment was because they don't really get back to that.
Well, they didn't do anything exactly.
Yeah.
Like right before that little snippet kind of comes to a close, she says something like, we'll put this talk on hiatus or
meeting adjourned for now.
And I was like, okay. And then
I don't know that they actually do that.
They never did, at least not for this chapter.
So I guess maybe
later.
I'm trying to think of like what the point of this dialogue would be from a writing perspective. And I guess the only thing I can think of without remembering if they actually have that conversation is that the writers want us to know that they want to talk about this subject with each other, but they just don't get a chance to. So there's some value for us to know that these two girls want to talk boys.
That they want to keep it on our mind.
Right. They want to keep it on our mind and they want us to be curious about it. And they want us to look forward to when they actually do get to have that conversation. Those are probably the reasons for this little exchange because like it doesn't really go anywhere, at least in the chapter after that. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
The group actually changes the subject to Rufus. So they do get to business. So lucky you.
The other thing I loved about it is where like they get super quiet, right? Because they hear someone walking and then Cloud's coming in, right? And then he just kind of stops. And then he's like, it's me.
It's me.
And then I was like, wow, what a line. Like it couldn't have been like, hey, it's just me, Cloud, or, whatever. It's just like literally two words.
It's me.
It's me. Like that. And I'm like, sitting,
you make it sound like a horror movie.
No, but the way he said it, it wasn't not like horror. It was more like, I'm gracing you with my presence. It's me. Kind of thing.
Well, they kind of feel that way though, because they want to talk boys. And who's the boy they want to talk about? They want to talk about Cloud. And there he is.
Exactly. He's right there. So the way he said it was like, it's me. I'm like, wow, that was a hell of a line to deliver as flat as you possibly could. But that was, pretty funny. So whether it was the writing or just the delivery, it just like this whole thing felt just very awkward. And maybe that was the point.
Oh, totally.
Because it's a love triangle. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes they're awkward on purpose, and sometimes this game is awkward not on purpose.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard to know for sure exactly what they're going for.
And then every time Cloud walks into one of these situations and they're like kind of having a little inside joke moment, he's like, huh? Like completely oblivious to what's going on. He did it right here too.
Yeah, they always make him like totally oblivious.
We can ditch the uniforms.
Aww. Well, it's been an honor, Captain.
And they start talking about Rufus and they speculate that, remember how in chapter 4, Rufus tries to cut a deal with them that they take out Sephiroth and he'll leave them alone basically. So right here, they start to speculate that offer probably would have come back to bite them in the end because they weren't able to go forward with the offer because Yuffie tried to assassinate Rufus. It didn't work out. Rufus blamed them, blah, blah, blah.
I think she did us a favor. Nothing good ever came from making deals with the devil. Shinra can't be trusted no matter who's in charge.
He's absolutely right. Because if you think about it, like you have Rufus Shinra, right? Who's now the president and CEO of like the largest corporation in the world or whatever. Like he's the equivalent of like the president of the United States. He's like the most powerful individual on the planet. Why would he make a deal with a bunch of eco-terrorists to take out Sephiroth? What threat does Sephiroth pose to him?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions there.
Right? So it's one of those like, wait a minute. So we have this guy, Rufus Shinra, that we don't really like. And then Sephiroth, we also don't like. But the two are opposed to each other. So this is almost one of those situations where like, I know this is going to sound weird, but some of our audience will get this. Like if you're in one of these, what do they call them? Like Fortnite and a battle royale game. This is like one of those moments where like you're running through and you see two people duking it out. Like you have a choice at that moment. You can either engage in that fight and end up in a three-way fight, or you let the two of them fight each other. One of them dies, the other one's weakened, and then you pick the weaker one off and take everything anyway.
Right.
So like to me, they were painting the situation of like, well, why don't we just let them two go at it? And then whoever ends up winning, they're in a weakened state, we'll take the other one down.
Maybe.
Who knows?
I interpreted that whole scene and trying to make the deal. Like, I think Rufus is really threatened by Sephiroth in some way, and probably some of that has to do with the Glenn Lodbrok scene exchange there, because I think he's kind of under the thumb of Sephiroth in some weird ways, or he's threatened by him. And so I think that he knows that Cloud is capable of taking out Sephiroth and probably more capable than Rufus is.
Oh,
right?
For sure. Absolutely.
So it's interesting. There's a lot of questions I have around that, even having finished the game, so I'm hoping they'll be answered in the third installment. But I think that the way that they've portrayed Rufus in Rebirth is, and in Remake, but especially Rebirth, is so much more multidimensional and interesting than the way he was portrayed in the original game, where he's just like some snooty guy who like throws his hair back and is like one note, black and white. Here, it's like you wonder if he has a conscience, at least, and then you wonder what his strategy and motivations are, and if he is as black and white as we thought in the original.
I think at the end of the day, his motivation is the same as any other person of power. It's to preserve that power.
Preserve it, yep.
I think he realized is that Sephiroth wants to make him pay for the sins of Shinra. And since he's now at the top of the organization, guess who gets to pay for it?
Very possibly.
So he's just trying to figure out, like, how do I get out of this mess, right?
Right.
And I think that's what he was angling for here.
So then going back to this cruise ship conversation, right? They're talking about Rufus. They decide it probably was good that the deal didn't work out. And then they're interrupted by the captain, who's on the intercom system, who announces that there's going to be a
Queen's Blood tournament.
We will be holding a Queen's Blood tournament in the lounge. Any and all interested guests are welcome to join regardless of experience. See the lounge staff for details.
You heard the man. To the lounge.
Yay!
And immediately I was like, oh yeah, this is a casino boat for sure now.
Yeah.
Like it's about to go down.
And this whole scene, it really starts to feel that way. For sure. It's the booze cruise. It's the cruise ship. It's the Carnival Cruise Line or whatever. So yeah, at that point, we leave the cargo hold and then that's when we actually take control of Cloud for the first time in this chapter, and we're able to walk around freely. And at that point, you're in the second class cabin area. Apparently the ship is divided into first and second class. If there's a third class, maybe it's like the workers' quarters or something like that. I'm not really sure.
The cargo hold.
Yeah, but this is interesting to me. And it sounds like you haven't actually been on a cruise, but the second class cabin area is apparently just these like handful of like big open rooms with a bunch of hammocks hanging in them.
Yeah. So
is this like a thing?
So this is something I put in my notes because I have seen this before.
Where?
I've actually participated in this, but
I have never seen that. I've been on like 4 cruises probably.
Not a cruise. I mean, I've never been on a cruise, but
there's like hostels.
I'm talking about being in the hammock. So back when I was in college, I did a quick tour, if you want to call it that, through South America. And there was one leg of the trip I had to take by boat. It was up a river and I had to go from one location to the next. And it wasn't a massive boat, but it was a pretty big boat. And the purpose of the boat was to move goods up and down the river. And the second level was exactly this. So
you've seen this on a boat, like hammocks
absolutely.
On a boat. Really?
Not only that, but you would pay to rent the hammock for the trip. And if I remember correctly, I paid like the equivalent of like $6 American, right? To rent this hammock.
To rent a hammock.
And so
was it in like a room like this with just a bunch of hammocks?
A massive big room. There's no partitions of any kind. You walk in there and they literally hand you the hammock and you take it in your arm and they tell you like, just pick whatever spot you want. And you basically hang up your hammock and that's where you stay because that boat ride was like 12 hours or something, and it was overnight.
But were there like families with children and vacationers?
There were absolutely families with children. There were old people, and then...
But were they actually trying to get to another location versus...
Exactly. They were just moving from location to location. Like
not necessarily going on vacation.
They were definitely not on vacation.
Okay.
This was the equivalent of like you and I taking a red eye between like San Francisco and New York, but on a boat, on a river, on a hammock.
Yeah, and I guess I shouldn't feel that that's super weird because on airplanes, everybody's like sleeping packed in, like sardines, sleeping next to strangers. And it's awkward enough that you got like the drooler and like the mouths hanging open. And it's just like, And you got first class and second class, just like you do on a ship. I've just never seen hammocks on a ship. If I were taking my family on a vacation, I don't know that I would want to like put my children in a hammock next to some randos. Like it just was weird because I assume this is a thing somewhere. And clearly I've lived a blessed life as an American who's gone on these cruises.
I was going to say, you've never seen this, but
like I've been to South America. I've been to some very impoverished places on some humanitarian trips. And I could see it happening in like an area like that. But like on a cruise ship for people going to a beach town is kind of interesting.
I've never been on a cruise ship, so I've never seen it there. And frankly, anywhere else in my life have I ever seen that.
I just wonder if it's a thing in Japan, right?
Oh, it could be.
Does anybody know? Anybody out there know? You've been on a hammock in the middle of the ocean?
The thing was that the minute I saw it, immediately it reminded me of back when I was in college. And I was like, well, that's weird because this is a casino boat. This isn't the same thing, right? This is a completely different thing. But it was kind of the same sentiment, which is
like it's almost a transporter ship.
Yeah, exactly. It was just it was a point A to point B. And so like I remember that the reason I did this back then in college was because this was like the budget way to get from one place to the other. And there were two things I remember distinctly about this. Like one of them was that obviously it was hammocks and it was awkward. But the second thing was it had like this little kitchen, I guess is the best way to call it. And this was some of the best food I've ever eaten in my life. It was
really?
Like
on that ship, on the hammock ship?
On the hammock ship, because it was like somebody cooking their home cooked food inside of this little kitchen. I remember it was like chicken with like, I think rice and beans and something else on it.
It probably is rice and beans if it was in South America. That sounds right.
I mean, I slept so well on that boat. It wasn't even funny. But yeah, to see that in this thing, I was like, well, I haven't seen this scene in 20 years. But I would never expect to see it on a cruise ship.
That's the only thing is like a cruise ship. Like, are there cruise ships in Japan maybe that have hammocks or something? Like, I don't know.
Who knows? But hammocks apparently are a thing now.
Apparently, and that's fine. It's not like a critique. It was just like, oh, big rooms full of hammocks. Not super familiar with that on a vacation.
On that floor, right? And then when you go up the staircase, it's like all opulent and like...
Right. They do have the first class, but they don't actually ever let you see the rooms.
My apologies. But these are the first class cabins. Other passengers are not allowed beyond this point.
So you don't know if they're just like big open rooms with like actual beds or if they're like individual rooms. Like you don't know.
You know that it's going to be like a presidential suite. It's going to be like the residence on Etihad or something like that up there, right?
I don't even know that the developers made that decision. I think they just kept the doors shut so they didn't have to.
That's another thing that reminded me of the Titanic, because one of the things that like James Cameron went through great lengths to portray in that film was the difference in like socioeconomic status between the protagonist and then the filthy rich people that were on the upper decks of that ship, right?
But like the third class passengers still had individual rooms. It wasn't like big open rooms with a bunch of hammocks. They had like probably 4 bunks per room or something like that.
Exactly. What quarters would look like on a Navy ship.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same exact thing. So this was different, and I could not figure out by the end of the chapter why this was this way.
Right.
But I'm always one of those people that believes like, no, there's a reason they put the hammocks in here.
Yeah, you give them a lot of credit. You're like, that cushion is purple and it must represent the royalty of the person that's about to sit in it. And I'm like, they just wanted that to be purple because the design looks nice. Like,
I mean, yeah.
I don't give them as much credit as you do.
That's true, but it's like, why a hammock and not bunks?
I don't know. Somebody obviously made a decision, but that's why I'm thinking more logically. Like somebody's been on a ship like this, like the developers, maybe this is a thing in Japan, maybe.
Or the person who designed this particular set had just come from a South American trip and rode on the ferry that I did.
It could be something like that. It could also be something as easy as just they wanted it to be these open, accessible rooms for us to walk around in.
To run around, yeah.
It's probably just that, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine.
We spent so much time on these hammocks. Like now we're going to go research on Amazon hammocks.
We are going to get to the bottom of these dang hammocks.
Yeah.
If it kills us.
If it kills us, yeah.
Okay. Beyond the hammocks, we're moving on from hammocks. So I also want to say that I think that the game did a really good job of filling the ship with background NPCs who all have, typical dialogue about being excited for their vacation and what have you. And if you try to listen to everyone, you'll find some unique conversations. Like, I don't know if you heard them because, again, I'm a completionist, which means I actually try to listen to everybody. But there's this group of girls in like the rest bench room. And by their tone of voice, it sounds like they're like gushing over hot boys. Like they're like, oh, like super gushy kind of tone. But if you actually pay attention to their dialogue, you find out that they're really talking about like their enthusiasm over the ship's engine.
Oh, baby, what I wouldn't give to hear the purr of that engine up close.
And can we talk about that frame? I like my ships well built, and this baby is thick.
I wonder if we could sneak into the engine room without getting busted.
It's worth a try, but security's looking pretty tight. But at least we can feel the ship's pulse from here.
Like they're like really excited, like engineering types or something.
So they sounded like Orange County.
Yes.
But they weren't.
But they were talking about like the mechanics of the ship and how it was built. I don't know. Things like that. I think it's fun that the developers throw in there. I think it was more, in this case, it was more funny in concept, right? So like appreciated in its attempted irony, but of course a bit cringy at the same time as these background NPCs can kind of be.
I'm literally speechless!
But par for the course.
Yeah, there was another one I passed by, and if you paid attention, it gave you a premonition of what's going to happen later in the game.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
That's why I listen to everybody, because there are things like that sometimes.
Like normally these kind of things, when I like That's why I have this. Right? Like I take my notes, like I'll pause the game and like take my notes.
I did the same thing. I know. What kind of gamers does that make us that we're like note taking? And then in my recording, you can tell when I'm taking notes because like Cloud will be standing there doing his like breathing and rotating legs for like 5 minutes.
If you happen to park it by an NPC, which I seem to always do it, and they just keep
then
talking
you hear
in
the
my
same
ear.
loop over and over and over.
Yes, exactly.
The sooner we're back on solid, stable land, the better.
It's nice seeing the Queen's Blood scene thrive these days, but I liked it before it was popular.
The sooner we're back on solid, stable land, the better.
But I have to take my notes because I won't remember if I come back
totally.
months or weeks later and try to like give it back. So yeah, I remember hearing something like that and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because if you think about the older Final Fantasies where they didn't have voice, right? They were just text.
And you had to actually select them.
You literally had to go click on every person to put together the story.
Exactly.
So like,
but they didn't have nearly as many people either. I mean, it was like,
right, it was easier.
You go to a town that's supposed to be bustling and it has like 3 people.
And that's what was great about back then is like, if you got lost and you didn't know where you were going, if you went back to the most recent town,
just talk to randos
and just talk to like 6 people, you could piece together where you're supposed to go next. Because inevitably there was one NPC that was like, have you seen that forest to the north?
Right.
I've heard there's creatures in there that drop golden eggs. And you're like, oh, that's where I need to go.
And you bring up a good point because now, because there's so many NPCs everywhere, you can find those conversations, but you have to get through a lot of like pointless conversations.
Yeah, a lot of junk. And you have to get like in just the right angle.
So you can hear that one instead of like the one over here.
Right, because otherwise it sounds like they're like talking to you from the bottom of a bathtub. If you don't turn the right way, you know what I mean? So like that's another annoying thing about like this game engine they're using to develop this game is just like beyond annoying. It's like, you guys need to upgrade, okay?
I think it's Unreal 5, isn't it? Or is it Unreal 4?
I don't know what it is, but for some reason I feel like I'm always malpositioned that I hear like this, it's almost like the Charlie Brown thing, but not exactly. And it's like, oh, this is so annoying. But I understand where it's like one of those where like they have to figure proximity in. Otherwise you're just going to hear everybody talking in one cacophony.
Right. Then you'll hear everyone when you're in a physical room.
Right. So it makes sense.
I actually don't mind it. There are times where it doesn't match and you're like, wait a minute. Or you're trying to listen to dialogue that's like actually programmed into the party scene at that moment when you're walking through somewhere. And you're passing by NPCs that you have to pass and they're louder than the dialogue you're supposed to be hearing, you know? So there are issues there. But for the most part, it didn't bother me. It just meant that I had to listen to a lot of cringe in order to get to some meaningful NPCs.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
There was only like 1 or 2 things that I heard that were of actual value.
Right.
The rest of it was just garbage.
The rest is just like, oh my gosh, I love that shirt.
But then again, think about it. If you're on a cruise or a casino boat,
that's how it's going to be.
90% of what you're going to hear is just trash. There might be like 2 people having like a relevant conversation that you might be interested in.
But if you like walked up to a random person on an actual cruise ship and like stood dangerously close to them in their bubble and just like listened to them, they wouldn't continue the conversation. They'd be like, dude, go.
Well, not just that, they're going to be like, security.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone come get this guy out of here.
But I do have to say, okay, so in that same room with like the engine girls who were gushing over the ship, so that's where you can find my, what do I call it? Jolie's favorite physics. So my favorite physics in this chapter is there's like a random beach ball on the ground near the save bench, and it's just demanding to be kicked. And I literally think they put it in there so somebody like me could be like, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I kicked that thing.
Yeah, so that was probably my favorite. There weren't a lot of physics options, I think, in this chapter. I think you knocked over some suitcases is what you said. Was that here?
There were some suitcases. There was one room.
I couldn't find any suitcases to knock over. I must have missed that. Dang it.
Or maybe it wasn't in this chapter and it was in the last. I swear it was in this one where you went into one room and there were some in the middle and they were the rolling ones. Like you would take, the rollerboard on an airplane.
How would I miss a room of suitcases to knock over?
And then I'm pretty sure I knocked over like a couple of like little tables that were along the wall.
But I felt like this chapter, like, because they didn't have a whole lot of like knockover physics kind of options, somebody was like, we need to put a beach ball in that room.
Something, right? Yeah.
For somebody who's like, where are my physics? What can I kick? What can I knock over? So thank you for doing that, developers. I appreciated it. But then from there, of course, you go up to the Royal Lounge, as they call it, and then you see some cutscenes of this new area that totally look like a cruise ship, booze cruise or something. And that's when the captain is talking on the PA system.
The winner of today's competition will take ashore a trophy, as well as a fabulous prize.
So he's setting the scene at this point for the Queen's Blood tournament that's been announced. And I do want to pause here and call out the voice actor of Captain Titov. I guess it's Titov.
Titov.
Captain T. They never say it. Titov?
Well, I mean, I'm sure
Titov.
it would be like Titov.
Titov.
Something
well,
like
if it's
that.
like if you're in like Mexico, it'd be Titov, but it's not. I guess they're going to Costa del Sol, so whatever. Okay, T-I-T. Captain Titov, that guy.
Captain Titov.
Titov. Captain Titov.
There you go.
Anyway, whatever the captain's name is.
First I'm hearing of this.
So the voice actor, want to call him out here because I think he did a really good job.
I did a phenomenal job. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. He's Jonathan Lippow or Lippo.
This is what happens. Like,
I really should look up these name pronunciations before we record these.
Like, if you don't know somebody with that name, you're never going to get it right.
Lippow. So that guy, that's the guy. I'll put his picture and his name spelling up on the screen for people. But anyway, right away, right when he started talking, in chapter 4, actually, he struck me as being a talented voice actor, right?
Be sure to mind your P's and Q's, huh? A lot of bigwigs on board.
He was well cast, I would say. And since my background is in film directing, I really want to shout out good voice actors as I hear them along the way in this game, because it really is a skill that not everyone has, right?
Yeah.
In 16, I would say everyone had it, but in most games, it's hit and miss. And so I think this was a win with Captain Tito.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, at the end of this chapter, I remember thinking to myself, like, this ship captain, he completely missed his calling as a game show host.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he should have been. And this voice actor should be a game show host.
Yeah, he has like a really good voice for that. And that's probably why they cast him.
Just replace Drew Carey or Steve Harvey or any, like, those two don't do too well anyway.
Do people watch game shows anymore, though? I heard Wheel of Fortune's still on, but I don't even know.
I don't watch them anymore. Like, when I was a kid, they would be on.
Yeah, but I mean, think about the casting, right? If you're casting for this role, you know he's going to have to act as like a game show host.
Exactly.
But he also has to be the captain, so he has to sound like he's kind of maybe in his senior years, that he's got some wisdom.
Authoritative, yeah.
He's authoritative. So they got to find somebody who can portray all of that, and I think they did a good job. They cast the right person.
Yeah, and I think Bob Barker's dead, so it's not like you could have Kim to do it. So
right, unfortunately. There's some good old classic ones. But I think that they cast him really well. And if you look at the voice actor, Jonathan's resume, it's no surprise. He actually has a ton of top video game and TV voice credits, especially in recent years. So it's great to see that the guy is working a lot, because I think he really deserves that. And then a fun fact about the voice actor of this captain, he's also a musician who sings and plays the piano. And he's apparently composed the score for a couple like small short films. So there you go. Good job, Jonathan.
A very talented individual.
Yes, enjoyed your performance in this game. Okay, so now back to what's actually happening in the game. So the captain, who's well voiced, is announcing the Queen's Blood tournament, and everyone seems really excited to play. This really is a laid back moment in the story, which is kind of fun. So even Cloud is like excited-ish. I mean, as much as Cloud could be excited, right, to play this game.
You playing?
I might.
He's as excited as a stone slab could be. Right? Like, I mean, he's really,
Stone slab. That's actually kind of accurate, right?
For sure. I mean, that's how he is.
But like, he's not just like...
Not interested.
Right, because his attitude is just not interested. But in this, he's interested. So that's like a change.
Everyone else in the group completely broke character for this chapter in terms of like their excitedness.
Kind of. I think that it makes sense for them to be excited.
We'll talk about it later, but Red's performance, come on.
Yeah.
Like that was on another level. But what I'm saying is like everyone else got like super excited, and Cloud, like I said, the stone slab cracked. Like he was a little bit excited. And then a little bit more in some of like his lines when he was actually taking place in
the tournament,
in the games.
Yeah, you can tell he's like bought into it. He's like threatening to beat people. Yeah.
So that's another part we'll call out later, was like some of the language, some of the lines that these people had was just like,
it was pretty funny.
It was just too much, but it was great.
Like Chadley, let's throw down.
Let's throw down, as they say.
God, I cannot stand Chadley.
We'll get to Chadley.
The minute I saw him, I was like, no.
Oh, so many people hate Chadley. But before we get to Chadley, to your point, think about it. The developers had to come up with a way to have Cloud participate while maintaining his actual character of being like not interested. I think they struck the right balance. I think it is ish believable that he would participate in the way that he did. But anyway, so in this scene, before the Queen's Blood tournament has actually officially started, this is when Regina asks Cloud if he's going to play.
Then I might see you around.
Also, Red says that he's going to play.
You're getting in on this too?
Solely as a means to study human leisure activities.
But then he's told that animals aren't allowed to play, and then he like jumps up on the counter and demands to speak with a manager.
My apologies, sir, but I'm afraid animals are not allowed to participate.
What? That's it. I want to speak with your manager.
He just pulled out a Karen right there. Like they just like the way they put this stuff in is miraculous. The other thing I loved was the way that Regina like purposely shoulder charged Cloud.
Oh yeah.
Like in order to create the engagement of like, yeah, I'm going to beat you, right?
Yeah, and then Tifa asks Cloud if he's going to beat her.
You're pretty good at this game, huh?
I guess.
Good enough to beat me, though?
And they give each other knuckles. They like pound it. I have not seen Cloud and give anybody knuckles until this moment.
Not give somebody knuckles in a non-violent way.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Like these little like interactions between the characters were interesting, and they were definitely like breaks from character.
I wouldn't say breaks. I would just say Aerith's game for anything. Tifa's super sweet. She's down for anything. I guess I could see Red.
Barret?
Yeah. Okay. Barret is really excited.
You joining?
Hell yeah, I am. Fabulous prize, here I come.
And then I think this is so funny. Cloud suggests that he change out of his Navy uniform first.
Yeah.
And Barret expresses that he basically doesn't want to because he thinks he looks really good in it.
Exactly.
But maybe change first.
Out of this? Nah, I'm starting to dig it. Tell me I don't look good. Like I was born of the bride.
He's like, why? And he has like that whole pose, like what is that meme that goes around with a guy that's like all chiseled and has like that hard jaw? It was like that moment, but for Barret.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, right?
Because he's massive, right? He's huge. And it's like, wow.
And it's moments like that I find to be hilarious and good writing, right? Like small moments. And, okay, because like the way that the writers in this game handle Barret and this Navy uniform is just pretty great in general, because obviously the whole reason that he's wearing it is to pay homage to how he wears it in the original game. So they pulled it from that, right? Had that outfit not existed in Original 7, it probably wouldn't exist here either. But then the writers went beyond just like figuring out how to make this Navy outfit idea fit into the narrative here in Rebirth, which was done by Barret, trying to go undercover or whatever. But the writers then take it a step further by making it look particularly ridiculous on him. So he looks like Stay Puft Marshmallow, which is hilarious. And then
they Peter Panned him.
Peter Panned him.
They gave him the hook like Captain Hook. It was like no more gun. Like, he's got the hook like from Peter Pan.
And then they like wrap this like horrible like tape around it that's just like the sloppy job. It's like it looks so stupid.
It does.
But the best part about it is that the writers could have left it there and just had him look stupid, and then that would have been funny. But they make it even funnier because he loves how he looks in this stupid outfit.
It's like almost like a bad Halloween costume.
But he's like, man, I look amazing.
And he loves it.
And that's the part that's even funnier to me. Like, the outfit is funny, but like little moments like where he says, oh yeah, I look good. That's just good writing all around. Like I so appreciate little things like that.
I almost lost it when they gave him the hook. I was like, really? Like this is, you took away that gun and you give him a hook. Like again, they're pulling from everything.
Right.
Like every piece of cultural, like whatever.
Yeah. Why not? Why not? I mean, we're with this game for over 100 hours, most of us. So you might as well throw all the fun things in there, all the inside jokes of our culture and traditions and mythologies.
Tell me I don't look good.
Then at this point in the game, if you run around some more, you can that's when you get to actually see the first class hallway, but you don't actually get to peek into the rooms. You can also talk to Aerith and Tifa some more and kind of maybe try to earn relationship points, I think.
I bet deep down you're a card shark, and you can smell blood in the water.
And I still cannot see those icons. They're too small.
Okay.
Even with my glasses. So I don't know what's going on, but I just talk to them.
See, I have other issues with the relationship points building, but we'll get to that when it actually starts to affect the story, because I have lots of opinions there for sure. But at this point, so there's also a lot of background NPCs in this lounge, obviously. And apparently the Honeybee Inn dancers, like dressed like bumblebees, are there. So they're not only on the ship, but they're like in costume, which is like, what?
Well, so was Andrea.
Yeah.
Like, he's in costume too.
But I think Andrea is like the kind of guy who would live in his costume.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's just Andrea.
And the way he sits on his chair too when he's playing is just like on another, like.
They got his character pretty right? But then there's like this NPC comment about how these dancers might sting the little boy, which was a little weird, but okay.
You'd better watch out, little boy, or you just might get stung.
Don't know really what to do with that.
Party, party, party! Yeah!
I will also say that one of my favorite background NPC scenes was actually on the front deck of the ship. And you'll have to tell me if you noticed this, but there was like this group doing a sort of ocean yoga. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I saw them. Yes.
Yeah, so they're doing this ocean yoga with these like stupid swim moves and stuff. And if you actually walk Cloud over there, he'll pause and join in to the yoga for a few seconds, which is stupidly fun. And it's such a small thing, but I appreciate small things like that.
Do you know what that reminded me of?
What?
This is going to sound so stupid when I say it.
Uh-oh.
That scene in Titanic where they're on the bow of the ship.
I'm flying.
And he's like saying that he's on top of the world or whatever.
I'm the king of the world!
I was like, oh no, here we go again.
But wait, why does it remind you of that? There's no scene like that.
No.
It's just the front of a ship.
Just because they're in the front of the ship and the wind's blowing on them while they're doing their thing.
Yeah, it is kind of one of those iconic scenes that every time you see the front of a ship, and let's be honest, like every time I've been to the very front of a cruise ship, I've thought about that scene. So I guess there's
I might have said it once or twice too.
I think
but
all of us have
stupid.
done it. I bet if you parked yourself 10 feet away from the front of a cruise ship, you would just watch people rotate through and take stupid videos and pictures of themselves saying that. At least us old people who were, teenagers when Titanic came out or whatever.
I'm king of the world! Woo!
So yeah, Cloud's doing these like ocean moves. And there's actually a few other times in the game where we've seen Cloud interact with his surroundings like this. So like in Nibelheim, if you remember.
Yes.
There's those like elders that are stretching or something.
They're doing the calisthenics and he gets in there and starts doing it. And then they asked him, did they outdo you or what is
something
it?
like that.
It was still so good.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's also like I can't remember the name of the singer. There's like a pop singer. Akira. I think it's Akira. You may not have seen them. In Calm, if you go, because it's multi-layered in Calm, if you, like in the lower area, there's a place where like some pop singer is singing and he's got like this crowd and he says a few funny things actually.
I always knew that one day I'd make it big and come back a star.
Perform at the Harvest Festival?
Haven't quite yet, but I'm working on it.
Cloud will actually go with the crowd and start clapping along. Like, so, I don't know. I love these little moments. Like, somebody had to animate that. Somebody had to program that. So
somebody had to write it to begin with.
Somebody had to write it, right? Yeah. So I like to recognize that the developers took the time to put those little moments in the game because I think they're fun. And you get to see it here too. And it's multiple moves too. Like when you're in Nibelheim, he'll do like one stretch, I think, every time you go back or something. In this like ocean yoga, you can get him to do a couple different yoga moves.
Yeah, those are all like great when you see those little things.
Yeah, simple little things. But I think, I don't know, I appreciate them. So thank you, developers, for putting those in for people like me and Ernest.
Next, we'll be moving into Terror of the Deep, plunging down into the sea.
So then Cloud goes back to the Royal Lounge and he registers for the Queen's Blood tournament with like the officiator. And the officiator gives him some message that he says he received.
Oh, you're Mr. Strife. As it happens, we received a message for you. Okay. Odd, I know, but if I may.
Do you know who sent that, by the way?
So I don't, and all I remember is it said something like, enjoy about your bloodthirst or something like or other, a friendly specter.
It pleases me to see you continue your Queen's Blood journey, Mr. Strife. May a sanguine thirst consume you for many matches to come. Signed, a friendly specter.
And the only thing I could think of is, again, we're at that moment where we're still trying to figure out what is going on, how is Sephiroth really involved in all this stuff.
Do you think that Sephiroth would have sent that?
I feel like it was Sephiroth or somehow involved, because if you're talking about a friendly specter, like it would have to be something semi-supernatural or supernatural. And so the only person I could think of, especially when you're talking about like the bloodthirst, the way the text was worded, and I wish I could remember the exact text right now, but it just came across to me as like Sephiroth somehow got this letter
sent
to Cloud.
So you think it was from Sephiroth?
I think so. I mean, that's just
Yeah, okay. Maybe our viewers, listeners have an inkling as to who that was, because it could be. I think Sephiroth is a possibility. I think my first assumption went to it being like maybe the inventor of Queen's Blood, the creator of the game, who we keep seeing in visions, which I don't know that you've seen him.
Or it could have been that.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that, that's actually a very good theory.
I thought maybe him.
I didn't even think about that.
But I don't know, because...
I just kept, like, the words that they use, like the blood, and I realize it's Queen's blood,
Queen's
right?
blood, right? So it could...
But, like, the whole thing about, like, bloodthirst and all this stuff, and then saying they were a specter, I was like, that sounds an awful lot like Sephiroth.
Yeah, I wonder.
But I could be wrong.
I really don't know.
And it's obviously intentionally vague so that we can have this discussion right here.
Well, right, exactly. Which, speaking of, the enough for her standard course twice.
You mind taking the lead, Merc?
For 2,000.
Enough for her standard course twice, right?
Her what now?
I found that out, what that means from Chapter 3 Mithril Mines. That was one of the course options for the hand massage lady.
So, which course will it be?
Actually, Spencer knew. Do you remember how I asked you the question, like, what did Aerith mean when she was teasing Cloud with, like, her standard course twice? So apparently that was a reference to Madame M, which is what I thought, but I couldn't remember because, you pick your different hand massage and there's some, like, sexual innuendo there. And I was like, okay, that's really random.
Yeah, I was like, hey, this is kind of weird.
But here, this is another question. So we could use help from our audience. Like, who do you think sent that message? Or do we know who sent that message? Was it Sephiroth? Was it the creator of Queen's Blood? Was it somebody else? Was it Rufus?
Who knows?
Who sent him that message? But I wasn't sure.
And that was another thing, that scene where Madame M and Andrea walk to the front of the boat and they have that little conversation.
Yeah.
That was also, like, interesting to me because it was like, she was saying, like, the air's different here.
The air's different here, isn't it?
Compared to Midgar, very different indeed.
Here are these two people who, their entire lives are pretty much wrapped up in this city. Almost like an undercity, really.
No, it was. It was literally an undercity.
Yeah, and the way they're talking to each other, it's as if this is the first time they've ever done this and they're experiencing it for the first time. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. You have, like, these individuals that lived a very, like, contained life, if you want to call it that.
Getting fresh air for the first time.
And now they're out in the open, literally on the ocean where, like, there's nothing as far as the horizon is. And I'm still trying to figure out what on earth were they doing on this boat.
And I just think they were there for a gag more than anything else.
For vacation or something, yeah.
Yeah, well, I just think it was a gag. I think the writers were like, this will be fun, put them on the boat. Like, we don't have to say why they're there. Like, just put them there because people love those characters and seeing them will be fun and nobody will question it. It's kind of, or very few people will question it.
I did. I was like, what are they doing on this boat? And
right, because you think that they made the cushion purple for a story reason.
Well, I mean, that too. But you're right. Like, when you actually play Andrea, it's like, it's a trip. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
I'm glad they brought him in, but it was just like, at first I was like, what are they doing here?
Yeah, I totally had the same thought of like, that's random. And why are the Honeybee Inn characters in like their costumes?
And the honeybees. And then, of course, they're all like doing their little dance and stuff.
Yeah, but that's just the game not taking itself too seriously. And like little things like that, they're like, we don't really have to explain it. We'll just put them on there. You could make the argument from a writer's perspective that having Andrea and Madame M be on the ship and comment on the air could signify that when you get a chance to see the world as it's meant to be seen without kind of Shinra's smog and influence everywhere and machina and like cement and everything, when you see that, like, it's us seeing through their eyes the value of the planet's worth without the smog of Shinra, right? And so you could argue that it kind of forwards the cause a little bit in their minds and therefore solidifies the importance of our mission in ours. Now that's really taking it a few steps, but you could say that that is part of it.
No, it is. And the other thing I kind of thought of for a brief moment was like, hey, they've now experienced this.
Yeah, like, are they going to want to go back to Wall Market?
Think about like the carnival cruise, the casino boat thing. I could see both of these saying, you know what? I'm going to take my show and my brothel and put them on this boat. Because it's like a giant cruise ship, right? Like cruise ships have shows, and
that's like totally a missed opportunity. Now that you say that, like
they could have had a show on the boat.
They could have had a show with Andrea, and like, oh man, because I love when Cloud Dance. She does like a double pirouette in Remake, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
and
the whole Dance Dance Revolution thing is not my thing. But it's funny.
I just thought the dancing is really good. Like, I thought the dancing was actually really good. Whoever the mocap dancers were really good. And I love good dancing. So anyway, Yeah, so as far as the message goes, like who sent it, I'm not really sure. But then if we're really going to get granular, I might as well bring this up. So there was a really subtle thing that I noticed when the bellman was telling us this message, or the officiator, or whoever that guy was. So Cloud, as he's listening to the message, his eyes animate so realistically in the way that they move. Like, just like if we were to listen to somebody, our eyes would kind of dart back into our head certain way. Cloud's eyes do that in those moments, which I thought was really detail oriented of the developers, because they could have just had stoic Cloud, you know, with the engine just moving him the way he normally moves when he's just sitting there. But somebody actually animated his eyes.
That's quite the letter, isn't it? An inside joke of some sort?
And our eyes don't roll. They're not like these like gradual rolling movements. Like our eyes dart like a bird's head.
Yeah, they move very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so small, and people probably think I'm crazy for even noticing it. But like those little things, they matter.
No, that's true. And I didn't notice that, but what I did notice was the emotion of the guy reading it when he finally got to like certain parts of that. He was like scared.
Oh.
May a sanguine thirst consume you for many matches to come. Signed, a friendly specter. Goodness me. That's quite the letter, isn't it?
You could see, you know, Cloud also was like, what the heck is this?
And so was I. I probably had the same eye movement. I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, who sent this message?
And that's the reason, like, for me, it felt like Sephiroth. Because
Yeah.
this guy
It's
gets
all
scared.
ominous.
They mentioned bloodthirst and a specter. It's almost like he knew who sent this, and he was like,
You think so? I don't think. Oh, Cloud? You think Cloud knew?
Cloud.
Yeah, I think that Cloud might know. I don't know. So Cloud's ahead of me there, but.
And if he does know, then most likely it's Sephiroth. But I'm just
Or the Queen's Blood creator. I'm not really sure.
I'm just hoping that at some point later, like they actually pay out, like who
That's
was
the
it
thing. Okay, so.
that sent it.
And I have a huge opinion there, right? It's like ambiguity. Some of that is okay, but you have to answer questions that you pose in games for the most part, or any stories in films. You can leave a few things hanging, like Inception, does the top fall? You know, that's a stylistic choice. But if you're just like asking a bunch of questions throughout a game and then you don't answer them when the game is over or the movie is over, I have a problem with that. Like, I have a problem with that because only so much can be left up to interpretation before you just become a lazy storyteller.
You know, I agree with you on that. And I know I give the writers a lot of credit in other places, but one of the things that like also kind of came to mind recently, especially like that letter and then this entire chapter, it gives me like this Shutter Island vibe.
I never saw it.
Okay, if you haven't watched that movie, turn away for like a couple of seconds. But basically you go through this entire movie and it is intense, right? And you get to the end and you figure out that he's actually schizophrenic and the entire thing is in his mind.
Okay, so it's
Right.
like a Beautiful Mind too. Beautiful Mind has a very similar kind of idea.
Very similar.
And that's cool. I think that's awesome if it's done well.
And of course, because, you know, we're involving Sephiroth and Cloud's always having these visions and all this other stuff, right? So it kind of gave me that vibe and I was like, oh, okay, well, I see where this is probably going. But this chapter right here was a very odd one for me, again, because they had like that juxtaposition of like the casino boat versus what happened in the third part.
In the third
and
part,
it was like, wow, okay.
Act 3 of Chapter 5, yeah. That's interesting. And I really hope they pay that stuff off. Like I said, you know, if like, especially the third installment, if it does not answer this list of questions that I have.
I feel like they have to here. I feel like they don't have a choice.
You feel that way, but remember, like Nomura is the guy who kind of screwed up Kingdom Hearts. Like, I am a former Disney spokesperson, right? I used to work for Disney and I'm a lifelong Final Fantasy fan. Kingdom Hearts was invented for people like me. It's a combination of both of those things that I love so much. And the first game was fun and then it just got weird. And commercial.
I mean, it's Disney.
But like story-wise, I was like, what is happening? And I lost interest completely. The former Disney spokesperson who loves Final Fantasy, was like, I don't care about Sora anymore. Like, I don't care. You know, and it's because of this guy.
Yeah, I couldn't even get past the first one.
Okay.
Just because for me, it was like,
Why are Donald and Goofy fighting like next to Final Fantasy characters?
well, just the entire like concept of like a Disney RPG just doesn't work for me because like the Disney characters are something else to me. They're not that.
They are totally different.
So like it doesn't work.
It was definitely bridging two worlds that didn't naturally go together. But I was interested in the first game.
And I know there are people that love it, and that's awesome. Like, I'm glad you were able to get something out of it. But for like me who grew up with those Disney characters, like
You're like, why are they?
I can't take them. It's like when Jim Carrey did The Truman Show.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Well, that's a great movie.
Like, I was used to Ace Ventura.
Oh, see, I love The Truman Show. And I think Jim Carrey actually is a very talented actor, even when he's playing straight.
No, he did a very good job in that movie, and the movie was a good movie. But
You just saw Ace Ventura while you were watching it.
I was taking out of it because of Ace Ventura. Like,
okay, that makes sense.
In my mind, he is typecast. That's the problem.
Yeah, and there's a few characters, like there's people in The Office that can never do another role because they're seen, like Stanley probably can't do anything else because he's always going to be Stanley.
Can't do anything serious.
Right.
But if he stays with a slapstick, he can print money.
Yeah. But anyway, so let's talk about the Queen's Blood tournament. Let's actually go into this. So apparently, and this isn't something that either of us did, but you can just forfeit every round of the Queen's Blood tournament if you're not a fan of Queen's Blood.
Yeah. So I know you can do that.
Yeah.
Because I forfeited the last round.
Did you really?
Yes, because what happened was, I don't know for what reason, but I just had such a hard time.
Really?
Wait, which round was it that I forfeit?
See, I'm going to go through every round, so it'll remind you if you did it or not.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. But I know that I forfeited one round at least.
Really? That surprises me.
And I know the story kept progressing, so I figured like, oh, I could have just skipped all of them. But I didn't. It was just one that I kept.
Did you forfeit it by going to the lady and talking to her? Okay.
Yeah, I went and talked to the lady.
On the right with like the blue dot or whatever.
And the only reason I knew you could even do that is because when the thing first started, the tournament.
I talked to everybody.
I went around talking to everybody.
And she's like, you want to forfeit? And you're like, no.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
You aren't planning on dropping out of the tournament, are you?
Like, for real?
I'll be cheering you on all the way to the final round.
And then I was like, oh, you can forfeit. Okay. So when I finally got to that one, and I'm pretty sure it was Regina.
She was harder.
I was like, well, whatever. And then I moved on.
She was definitely harder.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I can't imagine if you forfeit all the Queen's Blood games and you don't like go around talking to people, you could probably get this chapter done in like an hour.
Oh, I would think so. Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to me, given that I spent 17 hours on the last chapter, right?
Yeah. And you never know, like, that's the other problem. Like, remember when we were talking about whether or not you got all the Titan shrines?
Yeah.
You never know which one of these things actually matter.
That's true.
As far as the side games and side quests. Like, you could think it doesn't matter, and then you find out later, oh man, if I didn't get all of these shrines unlocked, I'm not going to be able to beat the...
But they don't matter like a ton usually. Usually side games will just like be... Like, they usually don't affect much except for things like your relationships with characters or like optional kind of stuff or like how many cutscenes you see with Queen's Blood.
But what happened to Spence with the Titan thing?
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
He couldn't get the Titan materia because he didn't get the Titan shrines. Yeah. So it does affect the game, but you don't have to have the Titan materia in order to finish the game.
Right.
So it's still technically optional.
That's true.
Like, they don't put you in like a corner, right? But... You know, again, I'm a completionist, so I want to do everything, right? So the chapter was 2.5 hours for me because I wanted to do everything. But if you do opt in to this Queen's Blood tournament, so there's a few different options. I didn't know this. There's a few different options of people that you can play each round. I didn't know, so I ended up just playing the first person I encountered in round 1. But I'm going to go through each round. Let's just talk briefly about each round. So round 1, right? For round 1, you can either play a robot named Wyze 3.0, who is a Queen's Blood specializing robot, apparently, or you can play a surfer bro named Felix. Both of them are level 1 players during this round. So do you remember who you played?
I played Felix, and now that you bring up the robot, that makes a lot of sense because I remember when I went to play Chadley, he mentioned that he was there because there was another AI.
I was told that a sophisticated AI was competing today. I just had to see it in action.
And I never saw the AI, and I was like, well,
yes.
I don't know what he's doing. So it's the robot. But I didn't even encounter the robot. I actually got the stupid surfer dude.
Yeah, me too.
Ready, set, let's do this thing.
Of course, I wiped the floor with him, but I remember that's who I got in round 1.
Okay, so I played Felix as well, and I beat him. I took my notes. I beat him 24-0 on the first try, so he was not hard.
Oh, well, I lost. Guess I should have learned the rules first.
He actually says some funny things, too.
Come on, man. You solid and ease up a little.
Felix looks asleep at the wheel. Wait, is he actually sleeping?
I remember he was talking and he was like really laid back and surfer chill, and Cloud's response to him is just shut up and play.
Everything cool? You seem a little tense. Just remember, it's only a game.
Just shut up and play.
And I was like, wow, like, yep, that sounds about
That's
Cloud.
very Cloud-like. Yeah. Very Cloud-like indeed. Yeah, so that's round 1. So then in round 2, you actually get to pick between your friends. So you get to pick between Aerith, Barret, or Tifa. And they're all level 2 players at this point, which I actually think it's really cool that you get to play Queen's Blood against your friends, like the people in your party. I think that's kind of fun. And you can also walk around during Queen's Blood at random moments and see your friends like playing each other, playing other, opponents and whatever over the different rounds. Do you remember who you ended up playing?
I played Tifa.
You played Tifa. Where was she sitting? Was she like down inside the lounge?
Don't remember. I did the same thing you did, which is I just walked around until I found somebody I could play. So in this case, I just randomly happened upon her, just like I happened upon the surfer dude.
Anything memorable about what she said or acted or anything?
So I have some notes here. The interaction between them, at least to me, it felt kind of forced, like the dialogue.
Sucks to be you.
That's so, because I came prepared to win. Think you can take me?
I didn't get to see it, so.
The reason it felt kind of forced, and I don't know, maybe it's just me misinterpreting things, but Tifa tells Cloud, they're trash talking, right? And she tells him, okay, wise guy.
Okay, wise guy. Show me what you got.
Which is something you would hear from like a typical New England accent type of person. And I don't know if the writers realize like the implication of wise guy. Like she basically is calling him stupid.
Or like somebody who thinks they're all that. Right. All right, wise guy. You think you're so good?
This is the weakest dialogue I think I've ever seen. But also, again, it just could be like, she's not like...
She's assertive physically, like combat-wise.
She's not an aggressive person.
But she's a pretty passive personality.
Yeah, once you get her worked up and she's going to fight, like she's on another level.
Right.
And it was like, it was okay.
Yeah.
Actually, the next round, that I thought was excellent, the dialogue.
Okay,
but
cool.
Yeah, this one was kind of weak.
Okay, that's fair. I ended up playing Aerith, right? Who I found, I think she was like outside on the deck or something. I ended up beating her 25-0 on the first try. So she wasn't very hard either.
Dang, you really showed me. Maybe I should have let you go easy on me after all.
Which makes sense, right? Because at this point in the game, we've already played harder opponents than like level 2 players in previous chapters. So I think the reason that the Queen's Blood tournament starts at level 1 players instead of like level 3, which is where we all are kind of playing at if we've been playing Queen's Blood. I think the reason they start lower is because if somebody who hadn't played Queen's Blood up to this point, if they decide that they want to join in this tournament, they can do it, right? Because it starts from level 1.
Right.
You know, which I thought was kind of cool.
This is going to be totally sick.
It opens it up to everyone.
And they'll at least beat the surfer dude because he's terrible.
Yeah, the surfer dude is really bad, right? And Aerith does some trash talking too.
Want me to go easy?
Want me to go easy?
All right. Your funeral, though.
I don't remember a lot of memorable dialogue between them, but I remember she was sassy and I thought that was kind of fun for Aerith.
Oh, there'll be a funeral, all right. I'm gonna bury you.
But Aerith has sass in her. She likes to tease Cloud. She likes to flirt with him, and you see that a little bit right here too. And then I do want to call out another thing that I got a kick out of through this whole thing, and it kind of starts here, was the progression of the fandom for Cloud displayed by the like officiator. Do you remember
Oh,
this?
yeah.
So after each round of Queen's Blood, you have to report to the officiator to like kick off the next round. And after round 2, which is around this point in time, when you talk to him, you see that he has like this little cloud tattoo on his face, which made me smile. But I was like, does he have a cloud tattoo? Like the officiator has a cloud tattoo.
I didn't even notice that, but it wouldn't surprise
How
me.
did you not notice? It was like,
I don't know.
Okay.
I wasn't paying attention. And the officiator, it's obviously not the announcer, which is the captain.
The
It's
captain.
a different guy.
I don't even know if he's an officiator. He's more like, he looks like a bellhop, but I don't know what else to call him. So
Yeah, he's like the registrar. Or
yeah,
whatever
the
of
registrar,
tournament.
maybe you
Yeah.
call him that. Because an officiator would be more like a referee who wouldn't be biased in his appearance. So it's maybe the registrar is probably a better way to describe it. Okay, let's get to round 3. So round 3, that's the wall market round, right? So at this point, you can pick between Andrea, or Madam M as your opponents, who we both know from Remake, from Wall Market, and they're both level 3 players, so it makes sense. Round 3, level 3.
By the way, it wasn't lost on me that Wall Market is so similar to Walmart, but we won't get there.
Yeah.
Welcome to Wall Market, the pleasure capital of Midgar that's got everything for everybody.
Well, the first times I heard them reference Wall Market, I'm like, oh, Walmart. But then it's supposed to be like a dirty Vegas or something. I don't really know.
I mean, have you ever been in a Walmart? Like,
it's dirty Vegas.
There you go. I go in them once in a while because I need to, and it's like, man, this place is trashed. What happened?
There's some lower quality Walmarts, and then there's some, I won't call them high quality Walmarts, but there's some cleaner ones.
There's no such thing as a high quality Walmart, but it's just like the majority of them I walk into, it's like a hurricane went through and no one bothered to like send me FEMA to clean it up, you know, kind of thing. It's like, wow, this is bad.
There's a lot of truth probably to that, I think.
Yeah, peopleofwalmart.com. If you don't know about that website, find it.
Oh no, are you serious?
Yeah, if you haven't seen that oh God, if you've never seen that website, you need to go.
I'm doing it right now. People of Walmart. Oh my gosh, it's popping up. Oh my gosh.
Oh. And there are probably at this point, I'm going to guess there's millions of these photos and videos on there. I don't know. I
can never unsee this.
I found this thing years ago. And I was like,
this has existed for years.
Probably a decade at least at this point.
That is.
It's on another level.
I'm just going to leave it with ellipses. That is.
Yeah. If you want a trip, go to that website. It's gold.
You won't be able to unsee it. Sorry, guys. Okay. So in round 3, who did you played Andrea, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And how was that?
And for the same reason, I just wandered around and he was the one I landed on, right? So that's who I played. It was so awesome. I have some notes here.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
He says, I'm only in the mood for cards.
Relax. I'm only in the mood for cards. I promise not to make you dance again.
Yes!
Unless you lose.
Yeah, but I did lose and he did not make me dance, and I'm really sad.
Then all bets are off.
I'm like, no, I'll lose if it means that you'll let me watch Cloud dance again, because that was awesome.
And then it got better from there. So like at the parts where he had like the upper hand, his lines, he was saying stuff like, I'm dancing circles around you.
I'm dancing circles around you. It's mano a mano, just you and I. Let's give these good people a show. I shall be graceful in victory. You do know how to show me a good time. You can do better than that. I expected more from you, Cloud. Come at me with everything you've got.
And then the best part was hearing the announcer, the captain in the background while this is going on. He's saying, Andrea's dancing on a knife edge, but how long until he gets cut?
Nice.
Andrea is the picture of confidence and swagger. Andrea knows how to captivate his audience and his opponent. The astounding Andrea Rodea is once again winning in style.
This is going on in the background. It's like, if you're not paying attention to it, like, these lines are epic, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end, when I beat him, he says, you have a gift, Cloud.
You have a gift, Cloud. Be it at the card table or on the dance floor, you excel. You're a star, darling. Keep on shining.
And I was like, oh my God, this is a rip.
Great. Like
it was so good.
See,
it was so good.
And that's one thing that Final Fantasy VII in particular does so well is they really lean into the characters' personalities. They really lean in.
Oh, yeah.
And that's awesome.
And the thing is, like, Cloud is one of those people that would be super uncomfortable around somebody like Andrea in real life.
Like he is in Wall Market. When they like dress him up as a girl, he's like, I do not want this.
So that like Andrea's trying to get in his head.
Totally trying to get in his head,
right?
Trying to make him uncomfortable.
And so like you can sense it in Cloud. Like he's very uncomfortable and very tense in this situation because of what happened in Wall Market.
Right.
This one round was like the best one ever.
So this is your favorite?
Oh, by far.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Well, no, it's not my favorite. It's my second favorite.
Okay, I know. That makes sense.
You know where my favorite's going to be.
Well, I think that's a lot of people's favorites for sure. But I don't know what Madam M is like. I imagine she's got some clever moments in there. I'm sure they leaned way hard into her character as well.
Back in Wall Market, we shared an intimate moment.
No, I remember. They're pretty hard to forget.
But I played Andrea as well. And the first time I played him, and he's a round 3 player, I did lose 8-13. on that first try. And again, I'm sad that he didn't make Cloud dance because I wanted to see that. But also, you got to remember, like, I still, at this point in the game, I don't think it was until like chapter 10 that I realized you can put a 1 peg card on like a 3 peg
It's
spot.
all about board control.
Yeah, like I didn't know that. So I'm still doing pretty dang well, not even knowing that that's like something you could do. So I'm playing a different game than everybody else, and I'm still doing all right, I would say, given the circumstances.
I think the AI adjusts.
You do?
I honestly do.
I don't think so.
Even by level, because I've noticed like
No.
card games, right? Obviously are games of chance. And I've noticed that there have been times when I've gotten like a bad opening hand.
So you're saying the only way that I win and I'm doing good at the game is because the AI adjusted to me being crappy?
I'm not saying that's the only reason. What I'm saying is I think the AI also adjusts. Like if it notices that, like in my case, that I got a bad open hand and I've just taken it, and I swear that the AI will like back down a notch.
You think so?
It's still going to beat you because you have a bad hand. Because I've also noticed the opposite. If I get a really strong opening hand, I've noticed that the AI will just hold no punches, right? When it's going against you. So
I wonder if that's the case.
I'm not saying that it lets people win. What I'm saying is I think it adjusts to...
It adjusts fairness. Like if you get a good hand, it gets a good hand. If you get a bad hand, it gets... I don't think so, though.
There's almost like 2 settings. There's like the level the player is at that the AI is capable of managing board control. But then there's also like a second level in terms of what hand it has. And I'm not sure that it even knows what hand you have.
Yeah, I don't know.
But if it does, it might adjust to it a little bit. That's just my opinion. It could be completely wrong. It may just be a fluke that the times that I happen to get a bad hand, so did it.
Well, yeah, because there have been plenty of games where they've gotten a good hand and I've gotten a crappy hand.
Oh, yeah, that happens.
So then how would you explain that?
No, that happens too. Like I've been trounced by him a couple of times when I took the bad hand.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's been a couple of times where I had a bad hand and I shouldn't have won, and I did. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
So
that's interesting. I don't think that's the case personally, but that's something I'm going to try to pay more attention to when I do.
I mean, because as someone who has played these kind of games for decades, like
I'm new to them.
When you take a bad opening hand and you know it and you're like, I'm going to risk it anyway. Because there's this thing we call greed, right? Like where you,
Balrog.
The opening hand would be excellent in a long-term situation, like you're multiple rounds through the game. But at the opening, it's very bad and you shouldn't take it. You're running a risk that you're actually going to lose because you're not playing your curve correctly. I've done that in this game and I should not have won, and I won somehow. So
interesting.
Anyway, it could be completely wrong that it's just one of those things where the AI also got a bad hand. Both of us did. But I've also had the situation where, like you said, I've gotten a bad hand and the AI just hammered a bonkers opening hand and just rolled me from the get-go.
And it happens more and more, I think, that way as you progress down the Queen's Blood like leveling path.
Yeah. One thing I can't figure out, like, how do I like get to the point where I can get all the cards that are available for either my level or where I'm at in the game without having to organically earn them through the normal progression of the game?
So I looked this up, like how to get cards, and
I can't figure that out.
Some of the ways that you get cards, you have to do it organically. Others you can purchase at the little card shops or item shops. And then others you can get other ways. Like you might be able to dig 1 or 2 of them up with the chocobo. There are some cards you can't get until you beat the game. So they're post-game cards, right? There's a few different ways you get them.
Because this is one of the things that's going to bother me, right? Like it doesn't bother me right now because I know I'm so early in the game, but I can promise you that as I get a little bit further, it's really going to bother me is that I want all the cards.
Oh yeah, totally. This is why I looked it up.
All of them.
And I finished the game.
Because I want to be able to build whatever I want, you know, that kind of thing.
Right. And I ended up getting, I think, every card you can get before you beat the game, because I wanted all of them. So I actually went to websites. I'm like, what cards can I get? When can I get them? And I went and made sure that I had checked all those boxes. Yeah. But some of them you have to get organically. Some of them you can purchase. Some of them are quest related, you know? So each card has like a specific way of getting it.
Let me tell you what I'm scared of here. Remember I said, I think it was in the last episode, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago, I don't remember, where I was like, you know what I really hope they do is like they open it up to where you can play other people online for Queen's Blood.
Yeah.
I would obviously love if they do that. But knowing Square Enix, what really bothers me is if this thing becomes that popular, and it seems like it is, they're going to end up making a stupid mobile game
And
that
it's
has
gonna have
microtransactions
where
to
you
get the
have to
stupid
get the good
cards.
cards.
That is going to piss me off so much.
Yeah.
I don't want them to go down that route, but it's like...
It's possible, though. It's very possible. So buckle up.
I won't do it. I'll tell you right now, I won't do it.
Well, you don't do mobile games in general, right? So
I don't do mobile games, but I do play like every now and then. Like, so my best friend and I, we have played Magic together for decades, right? But he lives in Texas and I live in California. So now the only way we can play is Magic has like a digital app and it's on PC and it's on mobile.
Does it have microtransactions?
It does, but we don't do it. So like I am so anti-microtransaction. So literally he's the only person I play on there. And this is not even that often. Like we do this like maybe once a month, but I'll go on there and I play against him with just the free card. I refuse to give them a damn dollar.
Yeah.
I will not give a game a microtransaction dollar. I just won't do it.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
If you give me the option to say like, look, here's the deal. There's an entire set of these cards. You can buy the whole set for a set price.
For like $5, $10.
$5, $10, I will pay that.
Me too.
But if you start doing this crap about like, well, you got to turn dollars into gems, and the gems
then you have to buy
packs,
the gems, you know.
and then the packs are not going to happen.
Right, and the whole purpose of doing that is so you don't realize how much money you're spending.
So just take more money, yeah.
Right, it's the same thing as going to the arcade and getting tokens that you then have to use in all the arcade machines instead of just putting money directly in, because it's easier to forget how much you just spent to get that stupid bear toy with your tickets. You know, like you could have gone to Amazon and bought that for like 5,000% less.
$5.
Microtransactions, this like converting into gems thing. It's meant so that you spend more than you would have had you been in the right mindset, right? Which I think is totally lame, totally unfair to people who don't have good control as it is. So I hate it too. I won't touch microtransactions. I have a few mobile games that I'll play that have microtransactions in them, but I will not pay the microtransactions at all. But I would, like you said, if there was like a package that was reasonable that you just purchased with money that was like an add-on, like DLC almost, then like I'm open to that. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about DLC. So
but I think people are really getting turned off by microtransactions.
Yeah, I would love for Square Enix to make Queen's Blood a separate standalone digital game, just like Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone, the World of Warcraft. There's a bunch of other ones too, but like do it right. Don't do this microtransaction garbage. Just do it where you can buy the entire set for whatever it is. Make up your price. I don't care if it's $100.
Yeah.
If you make it to where it's all one purchase and then people can just play each other happily from that point on, you got a winner.
Okay, I don't have a problem with purchasing aesthetic things that don't affect your gameplay in a game.
I won't even buy that.
Okay, so like Final Fantasy 14, I purchased a few mounts and a few like actions that you can do.
I won't even do that.
See, I'm okay with that because I feel like I'm paying animators and developers who created those, and I think they're fun and they bring me joy, so I only have to pay it once. That's okay because it doesn't affect your gameplay. I think it's so unfair when like wealthy people can get further along in a game than those who don't have as much money. So I'm like against microtransactions in principle, especially when they have to do with like game affecting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you won't even buy like I have a few mounts that I purchased.
No.
And I love them.
It's the same reason I can't stand the whole like tipping culture thing in the United States.
Oh, I hate tipping culture. Garbage.
Granted, those people are super hard workers and I appreciate them.
Yeah.
But the owners of those
need
businesses
to pay them what they're worth. I totally agree with you.
This is not my job to pay your employee.
So here's the problem too. It's like it preys on people who are nice like me. And it's tip creep, I guess is what they're calling it, is that you go to like some food place, you'll pick up your to-go order and they'll be like, how much do you want to tip? 20%. It's like, it's a to-go order. You were paid already to put this together. You haven't done anything deserving of I hate tipping. But I am the person that will actually, now I'm trying to be good and not tipping in situations where it's like, you really shouldn't get a tip. But I feel bad because I also feel like it's penalizing the person who depends on tips because the owner of the business isn't giving them what they probably deserve. You know, it's just a whole, but it really puts pressure on the wrong people.
Yep, it's terrible. And this is why, like I said, I refuse to pay for microtransactions. Like if I sit down and eat somewhere, obviously I'll tip the waiter. But you're right, like takeout, not going to happen. I did during the pandemic because I know that during that time,
that was different.
That was the only option.
Well, and there was like a health risk because nobody knew what the virus was about. Like you had to wash down your groceries when you got home, you know? So like delivery drivers were almost being being like heroic, like going out into the world, and the rest
Yeah.
of us were locked down in our houses. So there's kind of a reason to give them a tip then, you know?
Yeah, I remember seeing like videos of people like going to the grocery store and like coming back and like dousing the damn vegetables in like alcohol water. And I'm like, you need to calm down. You have taken it too far. Like
People went into a panic though, because we'd never been in that situation. It's so funny.
I understand that we didn't know. And
we know a lot more now and what we should and shouldn't have done.
Anyway, bringing it back to the original conversation, which is I would love for Square to do that. But if you go down that route, not going to play it, not going to pay, not going to do anything. Because that whole like thing of the microtransactions just irks me to no end.
Yeah, and you know, if they do have a mobile game with microtransactions in it, it's going to affect gameplay. Like you're going to be able to buy the better cards that make you a better player, and that is totally unfair.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, people could argue that life isn't fair and then everything costs money, yes, but like in a game universe, that just seems...
This is a game though.
Yeah. It's,
like, come on.
It seems unfair. Games are supposed to be fair. They're supposed to have rules that are set up. If you follow these rules, then these things happen. When you start like letting people pay money to be better at the game, it kind of feels like it defeats the initial purpose of the game.
I mean, it's kind of like letting people pay money to be better at life. And I know that exists, but like, come on.
Right,
you know,
right.
This is a game.
Yeah. But anyway, going back to Andrea.
You guys need to focus.
So Andrea, I beat him on my second try, 16-8. And then I do want to say, when you go to the officiator, or what do we call him again? I
called him the registrar. I only call him that because in college, that was
the registrar.
The front office, the registrar. Yeah.
The registrar. So whatever that guy is, when you go to him, this time he's wearing, do you remember this? He's wearing a full-on sash and like a hat with like cloud buttons on it that have something written on them in Japanese that I imagine has like Cloud's name or something on them. If someone speaks Japanese and can tell me what those things say, please leave a helpful comment and let me know, because I took a screenshot of this guy and then I tried like running it through what's called an optical character recognition website that's supposed to be able to read characters, but I think that the characters were like so stylized, it could not recognize them. It was an epic fail. And I only tried one website. There are probably better ones out there. But I want to know what the sash says. Like, does it say Cloud is the best? Or like, what does it say? I want to know.
I don't know, but I do know that there's an app that like I have it on my phone. So like I open up that translate app and just like hold it. It has like a camera thing and it just translates it on the fly to English. So you could try that too.
I'm sure it would work. I literally just went to this first website and you could tell it was before AI was a thing. It's probably an older website. It just happened to be top in Google search results because it's been around the longest, but it's probably not the most effective. So yeah, I bet you anything that your app would probably answer this question. Maybe I'll try that.
Yeah, I think it's a Google Translate thing and it has an option to use your camera.
Oh, okay. I use Google Translate all the time. I should just look that up.
Yeah.
I bet that is in there.
Incredible. You've already got 3 wins under your belt, Cloud. I can't wait to see what you do in round 4.
So round 4, which is definitely going to be your favorite round, Ernest, I can tell. So round 4, you actually don't get to pick your opponent in the Queen's Blood tournament. So everybody has to play Chadley, who's a level 4 player. Everyone has to play him.
Would you like to play a match with me?
You're in this too?
Correct.
So I assume, Ernest, that you played Chadley in Queen's Blood.
I did.
Did he beat you? Did you beat him? Do you remember?
I beat him, okay? And Chadley should not have been in this tournament.
Why?
Well, number 1, I hate him.
Though if anyone were to feel threatened, it really ought to be you.
But number 2 is like, ignore the fact that it's him. How is it fair to have an AI
Well, he's the second one.
participate in this tournament? Now, I realize, obviously that was part of the dialogue with him. It was like, I was here because I heard there was another AI.
I was told that a sophisticated AI was competing today. I just had to see it in action.
And obviously I never saw that robot.
Yeah, but you could argue that in reality, every single character you play is an AI.
I mean, yes, this is a video game, but like imagine this was a real world tournament, right? You're in there and there's an AI.
But maybe he's only a certain level, or like he's a level 4.
Well, I mean, they capped his level obviously in here, but the point is like you as a human would be like, or at least I as a human would be like, this is not fair.
Yeah, it wouldn't be fair.
There should not be an AI in here, especially one as annoying as this one.
Let's throw down, as they say.
I know a lot of people hate Chadley. Spencer, my husband, hates Chadley. I actually...
You don't say.
And I didn't care for him much in Remake. I thought it was weird.
I sense a sudden surge of emotion in my future.
But in Rebirth, and it's probably because I'm doing all of the quests, he's starting to kind of grow on me as being like this like cute little AI guy.
Kind of like a cancer would grow in you. Like it's, and that's actually why I hate him. It's not like the character itself is bad. It's that he's always wanting me to go do his work. And I'm like, why are you so lazy? You're an AI. You could just go do it yourself.
But he's not like, he needs like somebody to go fight monsters. He can't fight monsters, you know? Like
he's an AI. I'm sure he could fight them. Or you know what? He could just hide from them.
Yeah, but then he can't like, I don't know. Whatever. He's there for people to explore. He's like a means to an end, right? The thing that I don't like about Chadley is that sometimes he just won't shut up when you just want to get something quick done when you talk to him in different chapters.
The whole like menu thing, like just trying to get out of the menu from talking to him. It's like, I'm tired of talking to him.
Have you made any progress lately in the hunt for that proto-relic I mentioned before?
That's one of the biggest issues. The other issue is like you can spend 10 hours doing stuff for him and you come back and he's like, thank you, Cloud. And then like literally you step away for 30 seconds and come back and talk to him. And he's like, I've noticed that you haven't really done any intel for me.
I've observed that world intel collection is stalled of late.
He like gives you a guilt trip. You're like, I just spent 10 hours doing it. Like it's so that makes him obnoxious.
Yeah, or you spend 10 hours doing this whole thing and then he gives you a wet sock material. And it's like, what are you doing? Why did I just waste 10 hours? Like
wet sock material.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like it's something stupid and it's like, man.
But I don't know. Something about Chadley is like kind of growing on me. Anyway, he beat me though on the first try in this tournament 9-20, and then I beat him on the second try 25-0. So that was how the game went for me.
This is what I'm telling you about like this AI. This is what I'm saying, that it's like weird.
I don't think it got easier. I think I just...
No, I'm not saying it got easier. I'm saying like there's like a secondary balance tier to it that you can have a blowout in the wrong direction. And it's like, what happened here with this game?
That's true. But sometimes you play somebody and then you realize you need to build a totally new deck. And then you go back and beat them, right? So I don't think like the AI is getting easier or adjusting to you. I think that you have to adjust to it.
Oh, so you switched your deck is what you're saying between the games?
Probably is my guess.
I usually don't unless...
You will have to in later chapters because it gets really specific.
Unless I'm getting blown out really bad, then I'm like, okay, this deck is clearly not the right strategy for this opponent type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that brings us to round 5, which is what we think is the final round.
We think it is. And this is the one that, I mean... Man, I hated this one.
Really? Okay.
I'm pretty sure this is the one I forfeited, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this is the one where somebody comes and they escort us up the steps to fight Regina, right? And then there's NPCs all over the ship who are like gathered around and they're all cheering for us along with like Barret and Aerith and Tifa. So it's like this fun spectacle. And Red isn't there. I wonder where he could be.
Yeah, it's like the cruise ship version of the scene where you fight the motorcycle dude.
Roche?
Roche, yes. It's like the Queen's Blood tournament version of the Roche. Like they,
it is.
Yeah.
That's a good way to describe it. It's very similar kind of vibe for that, right? So tell me, I want to hear what happened to you with Regina.
Nothing. I got wiped out and it happened like 2 or 3 times in a row and I couldn't figure out why. I reconstructed a deck and one of those, it didn't work. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm just going to go forfeit. And I did. So yeah, I just basically gave up and moved on. What about you?
Okay.
Regina Konigan, Queen of Cards and reigning champion.
Until now.
Aw, that's cute. Word of warning, I'm not just gonna beat you, I'm gonna destroy you.
We'll see about that.
So Regina is a level 5, so she's harder than anybody we've played before up until this point, right? And she was harder for me too, and she actually beat me 4 times in a row as well. And then I beat her on the 5th game. And that was after building a whole new deck and then revising that deck.
Yeah, I think I gave it 3 and then gave up. So
okay.
Yeah.
See, I don't know. I'm just like persistent. I'm like, I'm going to kick your butt. And I finally did beat her on the 5th try, but it did take 5 tries for me. So she wasn't easy. She was definitely the hardest one by far. And before we move on to the next round, I do want to point out that when you play Regina, did you notice the music changed? Do you remember anything about that?
So this may have been part of the reason why I gave up. I remember it feeling like it was just more intense.
It is. Yeah.
Whereas everything else was very jolly.
Yeah. It's like jazzy usually.
This was like cutthroat.
It was boss music for the card game. It's boss music. It is. It's literally that. Like
that makes sense.
cool because, yeah, usually when you play this game, it's like jazzy music, there's some themes, you know, but whenever you play Regina or like a boss in Queen's Blood, you get this like incredibly well-composed, intense violin score that is awesome. If you sit there and listen to it, because I listen to the soundtrack of this game like on a loop while I'm working during the day, right, with my day job. But if you listen to it, it's a really good song and it totally fits.
Is the OST out yet on like iTunes?
It's out.
I'll have to go look for it because I got the one for 16 and that thing's like what?
16's great.
3 discs.
They're both huge.
Yeah.
I have them on playlists on YouTube Music. I just love the score and it instantly kicks in there and it's great. Okay, so that's Regina. So you forfeited Regina and you're like, whatever.
Yeah.
So then, okay, that makes me curious what happens after the next thing then, because I wonder if it was the same ending that I experienced. So I beat Regina.
No, there's no way I lost.
Can you believe it, folks? Cloud is our winner.
And if you beat Regina, you think you're the winner, the captain's about to crown you the winner, and then suddenly, Red.
I present to you.
Not so fast, good captain. I've yet to show my hand. Two legs, nothing to it.
This is why I love this ending of this section so much. Captain Titov comes out and like Elvis on stage and is like, a new contender has shown up.
Totally game show.
And then all of a sudden you see what's about to happen and you're like, oh no. Oh no. When I saw it, I couldn't like,
okay.
But then again, like, yeah.
So I think you and I actually had similar reactions. And I was curious what you thought because I know that in past conversations, you've said you don't love the humor in this game. But it sounds like you bought into this. And so
one thing sold it for me. Just one thing is what sold it for me.
Was it the moonwalk?
Yes.
And I knew it. I knew it was. Okay, so Red bursts onto the scene. Let's just recall what happens. And he's in a trooper uniform because he's trying to disguise that he's not actually like
an animal.
Yeah, an animal.
Yeah.
So that's how he does it, is by like wearing this trooper uniform.
And trying to hilariously walk on 2 legs.
Yeah, and it's just like ridiculous. And he's dancing like he's Michael Jackson, basically. It's just some hilarious music.
He does the whole thing where he like spins around and then does the moonwalk. And like, I know that Michael was an international pop sensation. Like there is nobody on this planet who doesn't know who he was before his propofol incident.
Yes, everyone knows. He's a huge icon.
So obviously it was like, okay, they know who he is.
Right.
But the way he was doing the moonwalk, I was like, oh my God.
He moonwalks and he spins. It is so ridiculous.
And not just that, he did it just like the music video. He has like the helmet on, like with his hat, and he has his hand like this.
It,
oh
you know,
my God.
100%. They lean in hardcore and like Red is this like Wyze character at this point. Like that's what we've been exposed to is this Wyze Red, you know? So to have him jump into a costume that's ridiculous and do these kind of dance moves, it's totally out of left field. And I remember, like you, at first, I didn't know what to think. I was like, what? I literally, the words in my mind were, what is happening right now? Like it was.
Well, the first one in my mind was like, no. And then when he did the moonwalk, I was like, yes.
You're like, that's it.
Night and day. They did it.
I am in.
I am in. I love Michael. Like not pedo Michael, but like Michael's music. I love his music.
Oh, he's insanely talented.
Yeah. So like I was like, oh
music.
Yes, this is awesome.
Yeah. So I kind of had the same kind of idea. It was just so over the top, but it was intentionally over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And like to have, I mean, how can you not just like smile at a moonwalking dog cat thing with a flaming tail? And
it was just too good. And the best part was that they like zoom in on his feet when he's doing the moonwalk.
The moonwalk.
Like the animation, they zoom right in on his feet and you watch him doing that. I was like, oh, this is just.
They leaned in hard.
The animators just nailed it on this one.
They really did a good job.
Yeah.
And like it goes back to the theme I have for this game, stupidly fun.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is just stupidly fun, right? And that is totally this moment too.
Seriously?
Though I am far from a humanoid, the illusion can be maintained with the aid of a little flamboyance. Impressed?
No.
And then, of course, at that point, we actually play a game against him. And I don't think they specify what level of a player he is.
Get ready to shuffle!
All right then. Let's play.
But he did beat me 5-10 on the first try, and then I beat him on the second try 18-9. So he actually wasn't as hard for me as Regina was.
No, I beat him on the first one. So like,
oh, okay. So yeah.
He was not as hard as Regina at all, but I think that was the comic relief at the end. Like you had just been through this turn, and if like me, you had been walloped by Regina and you were angry about it.
Yeah.
Like at least it brought it down towards the end, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also do want to point out though something that I appreciated about this whole Red ridiculous scene. So okay, it seems so random. It seems like it's so out of left field. But if you actually go back and look at the original game, it's actually paying homage to the original game. Because in original 7, Cloud is walking around on this ship, right? Which is just a Navy ship. And you see this trooper up on the deck, and he's doing this dancing kind of goofy walk thing, like a dancing walk. And then if you go up there and you talk to him, you find out it's actually Red wearing a trooper uniform, struggling to walk on 2 legs like a human being. So that's all the moment is. It's just this awkward, like, dancey, walky Red in a trooper costume. But remembering that made it obvious to me that that's where this whole Michael Jackson moment comes from. It's not actually as random as it feels if you go back and look at the original game, right? So again, it shows us how conscious the writers are being about paying homage to the original game and trying to stay true to the original game in a certain sense, while definitely adding newness, because they totally they took that little moment and they really went all in and expanded it like crazy.
You know what I can't figure out though is like they could have, and I realize like there might be some kind of like trademark stuff here, but they could have like put in just a little snippet of a Michael Jackson like theme into the music. Like,
they could have done a tiny sample that would not have been copyright infringement. They were probably afraid. People who are doing a Star Wars parody, they'll compose music that obviously is mimicking Star Wars, but it's a totally...
Yeah, like you'll hear like a 1-second blip of the Imperial March in the background and you're like...
Or you'll hear the Imperial March with like 2 notes swapped. You know what I mean? Like it's where it's obvious. I wish they would have done that here too, right?
Yeah, missed opportunity, but it was still... it was hilarious. It was a riot.
It was great.
Yeah.
So I'm curious then. So for me, the captain at this point gives Cloud the trophy. Cloud hums the victory theme.
Congratulations!
Which I thought was clever, and I love that too. And then the party walks back to their rooms. Did you get a trophy?
No. Well, I don't think I did.
Because you probably had to beat everybody to get it.
There's no way I lost.
And then the party walks back to their rooms, and Red has this like hilarious little shuffle that made me laugh out loud. And then of course, they get back to the rooms and the levity is topped off with Red standing there in this trooper uniform looking totally ridiculous. And then Barret's in front of the mirror basically admiring his outfit.
Admiring himself.
Right.
Yeah. It was too good.
Right. And then everyone goes to sleep and it's time for a tone change, right?
Oh man.
Part 3. So the third act of this chapter. So that point we cut to nighttime. Everyone's sleeping in their hammocks because that's what we have here. Well, Red is sleeping on the floor. And then there's like this ominous alarm and announcement from the captain that there's an emergency.
Attention all passengers. We have an emergency on board. Return to your cabins and remain there for the duration. Military personnel are to report to the deck immediately.
And it wakes Cloud up and he does this like super fancy leap out of his hammock, which bravo to the mocap actor. I thought that was really like graceful and cool. And then Red wakes up too. And I love how the two of them just like leave Barret behind. snoring in the hammock.
That's us.
And there is a purpose for this gag. It's actually a tactical way, again, to split up the party for what's coming, but it's fine. It works for me.
Yep.
Although I will say, if there's an actual emergency on a ship, I don't think I would handle it by waking everyone up on the PA system and telling them there's an emergency and then not giving them any safety instructions.
Oh, he did give him a safety instruction. And he says, he said something like,
it's like stay in your rooms.
Stay in your rooms. That's exactly what it was. It was like,
that's not a good safety instruction.
Well,
they would have done that anyway. Why panic everyone?
Well, I think the point was like in an actual situation like this happening on like a cruise ship, right? Where there's a situation, if he had not said anything, and the passengers got woken up by this massive commotion that was happening.
Well, then give more information then or something. It just felt like the announcement felt like, everyone wake up and panic right now.
We have an emergency on board. Return to your cabins and remain there for the duration. Military personnel are to report to the deck immediately.
It's like any other emergency situation where it's like a panic, non-panic situation. So remember that these rooms, because it was a repurposed like ship for something else, had these huge, massive, heavy doors. And so what I think he was trying to do was like wake everybody up to tell them there's a situation, but stay in your quarters, as in do not open the door. And then it was funny because like he does like this whole like there's an emergency, but stay in your quarters, but all military people get to the top deck.
Military, huh? Guess that's us.
So like everybody was like, I guess that's us, right? And then they like take off to go upstairs and like deal with it. So yeah, it was hilarious the way it went down.
I guess I've never been captain of a ship.
I mean, me either.
I can't really say like what the right way to go about it. And like, I like being informed, but I don't know. I just felt like he was like, attention all passengers. Horrible things are about to happen. Stay calm.
Exactly.
And he was just like, that okay, you know?
What the hell's going on here?
What's going on? Are we gonna be okay?
So then at that point in the game, Cloud, Tifa, Red, and Aerith, they meet up with the captain, who explains that fiends have invaded the ship. That's the emergency, right?
They're everywhere. Please, you have to help.
Copy. We're on it.
Tifa then goes with the captain at his request, and then our party officially becomes Cloud, Red, and Aerith, who then run past a bunch of terrified crewmen.
Keep it together. Just remember your training.
They go to the outer front deck of the ship, the bow or whatever, and that's where we encounter our first monster fights. And specifically, we fight off monsters called Scrutinize, which are those little flappy eyeball things, remember? And then, I don't even know if I'm gonna say this right, experimental Vargid
Yeah, something.
which are like those screeching four-armed ugly things created by Hojo. At least they're in the same family as the ones that we saw in Nibelheim in the flashback with Sephiroth.
Hojo, you are really something.
And then we fight a combo of the two. And in both fights, those experimental whatevers, they do this like ominous countdown that obviously they're gonna do some major damage or something when it reaches 0, but it never actually reached 0 for me. So I'm not 100% sure what they do when that countdown goes down. Do you remember?
No, because I play in story mode, so I never...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, there was an ominous countdown that never came.
Wasn't that ominous for you? That's right. My guess is they probably do Screech, which stuns everybody in the party or something, because the same obnoxious creations exist in Ever Crisis, which is a mobile game that I will not give them money for microtransactions, right?
Yep.
But they're in that, and they can really mess up a battle by doing Screech and stunning everybody in your party.
Yeah, there's one too. I remember like several times I got stunned by some kind of electricity thing.
Yeah, and it's probably... I think they also have like smaller moves that do it individually.
Yeah, and I remember like every time that happened, I'd have to switch
It's obnoxious.
characters to another one because the one I was playing was like down for a couple of seconds
Right.
because they had gotten shocked or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that happened to me a few times too. Now, I do want to point out, as far as original 7 goes, so we do fight Scrutinize on the ship there as well. But instead of fighting these like experimental Vargidopolises or whatever they are, instead of fighting those on the ship in the original game, we actually fight a whole bunch of Shinra troopers. Because in the original game,
It's a warship.
it's a warship, but we had already encountered these like experimental whatevers or twin brains or something in the same family that looks the same in Hojo's lab, but they don't actually show up here in the ship. And there's a legitimate story reason for that as to why that's the case. So in Rebirth, the ship is obviously this passenger cruise ship. And then the alarm is sounded because monsters seem to, quote, randomly overrun the ship. Although we suspect that Hojo has something to do with it, maybe, or at least his creations are causing, there's something going on here that's...
Oh, we know he has something to do with it.
Because, it's clear that these are his creations that have taken over. But in original 7, the ship is just that military ship. And the alarm is actually sounded for a totally different reason. They sound an alarm because a stowaway was sighted.
Yeah, there's an intruder on the boat. Yeah.
On the ship, right. And then it's funny because Cloud's party just assumes it's Sephiroth, which is kind of funny to jump to that conclusion, like out of all the intruders. Okay, I guess Sephiroth's on the ship, so they go looking for him. That's when we fight troopers and scrutinize along the way, so it kind of makes sense. So obviously Rebirth took this in a slightly different direction, but ended with like a somewhat similar result. And since we're technically in Rebirth on the same side as the Shinra troopers in this effort, it wouldn't make sense to randomly fight them along the way like we do in the original game. But anyway, back in Rebirth. So once we fight off the fiends on the front deck, we then see more of them like fly into the lounge. Do you remember this? And then Red tells Cloud basically that he and Aerith can stay back and handle the ones on the deck, while Cloud goes after the ones flying into the lounge. And then Cloud like mad sprints into the ship. And I may be a little bit daft, but at first I thought that Red's comment of being able to handle the monsters meant that like he was confident that the three of them together could handle and like prevail together.
Uh-oh.
We can handle this.
And then it looks like Cloud's like, whatever, and he just ditches them and like sprints away on his own. And it's like a small thing, and maybe I'm the only human on this earth who was like, why are you ditching them, you know? But it would have made it more clear to me that Red was volunteering to stay behind with Aerith if we also saw other monsters like swarming the deck as well. Because all we see are monsters flying into the lounge at this point. So like there's no reason for Red and Aerith to stay behind that we visually see. We have to assume that there's more monsters there. Anyway, small thing, super weird for me. But either way, that moment again is another tactical way for the writers to split up the party and have Cloud go solo for a minute so that he could then later meet up with Tifa. So then Cloud runs into the lounge and you rescue some terrified crewmen from some attacking fiends, and then soon we join forces with Tifa, and then we run into like the second class hallway again where things really start to get interesting. So in front of our eyes we then see like two of those experimental Vargid Polices or whatever. They attack two robe guys, and then they basically merge with them, and they turn into this creepy hybrid monsters called necrotic entities, right? And then Cloud does make a comment that the robe guys can't be targeted at random.
Those guys aren't being targeted at random.
So we know something's going on here, right? We don't 100% know what it is. And then we actually cut away from the ship entirely to a cutscene with Hojo. And he's in the Shinra building, and he's watching by like video conference. The captain is like frantically explaining what is happening with the fiends and the robed guys. And then he asks Hojo what he should do.
I must harvest a sample of its DNA.
So what should we do?
Because he trusts Hojo as like a leader, right, of the Shinra organization, which technically the captain would work for too, because this is a repurposed Shinra ship, apparently. And Hojo's response is very telling of what a piece of human debris or video game pixel debris, whatever he is.
Yeah.
So he not only tells the captain not to interfere with the experiment, but then he tacks on the comment. This like, I didn't catch it at first. I watched it a second time and I was like, oh, he really meant that, you know? He says, do mark your body.
Do mark your body to aid in identification.
Which is such a blatant disregard for the captain's life to his face.
But what he said before that was even...
Which part?
So when this is going down, right, he's talking to Hojo. And remember, Hojo's doing his whole like, this is an interesting, you know...
Yeah. He's like...
His like mad scientist nonsense, right?
Yeah. He's a pretty cliche character, but...
Exactly.
Still interesting.
And then the captain says... You know, what should we do?
Yeah, he's asking him for advice.
And Hojo says, make sure the experiment goes on.
Ensure the experiment proceeds uninterrupted. And in return, you will have pride of place in my lab. However, do mark your body to aid in identification.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. He's saying he's going to take his body back and turn it into these weird experiment stuff.
What Hojo's actually telling him is to let the thing merge with him. And if he marks his body ahead of time, then when Shinra eventually comes to claim the necrotic entities and bring him back to Hojo's lab, this guy, the captain, will end up like in some special place in Hojo's lab.
So you think that Hojo assumes that these are merging with other people? See, I thought that it was clear that they're only merging with black robes. So why would they merge with the captain?
I think that it's not the case that they're only merging with black robes.
Or they're just targeting them.
I think what Hojo actually thinks is that they're going to merge with everyone on that ship.
Interesting.
And because that's what he's telling him right before this.
But like he like gets off on it. He's like excited.
Oh yeah. Well, he's a mad scientist, of course. Like he's,
right,
that's his thing. So think about what he's telling him. He's like, you'll get pride of place in my lab. Well, you're not going to be in Hojo's lab if you're dead. You're only going to be there if you are a thing that he has in captivity in a tank or something, right, for research. So he's basically telling the captain, like, yeah, you're done. But if you mark yourself, I'll make sure you get a good spot in my lab.
Interesting.
Dude is nuts.
Which is super interesting because in Remake and Rebirth, the writers seem to just generally be making an effort not to make characters look super black and white or like completely evil with no good in them. They like to like walk this gray zone with some people, like with Rufus and Sung, right? They're examples of them adding a lot of gray or like mystery of their motivations, or at least the appearances that there could be gray in there. But with Hojo, he's just straight up evil.
Oh yeah.
Like they do not try to give him any like morality at all.
Yeah.
They even give him that like stereotypical maniacal laugh, which he does at the end of this scene. Just like he did it in Remake. He does it in Crisis Core. He does it in Dirge of Cerberus.
Hojo! What are you?
He's just like this, like you said, he's a mad scientist. He's a caricature of a villain, really.
Oh, yeah.
But then at the same time, he's actually influenced by actual people in history, it seems like Mengele from World War II.
Oh, yeah, that and all kinds of like, there's plenty of other like cultural references for this type of mad scientist. Like,
but like that disregard is so psychotic to me. Like disregard of human life and well-being. He does not care. He legitimately is a psychopath.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can go all the way back to like the doctor in Frankenstein.
Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! Oh, in the name of God! Now I know what it feels like to be God!
That's a classic example.
To the point where he's like,
it's alive!
Doesn't even have regard for anything other than his science.
I made it with my own hands from the bodies I took from graves, from the gallows, anywhere.
And even then it's warped science, right?
Yep.
And then like he goes back to, and I'm sure the payoff at some point is going to be like the dwarves who delved too deep for Mithril.
Yeah.
They unlocked the Balrog. At some point his own creation is going to axe him.
Probably.
I don't know if that happens in this game.
I can't remember what happens to Hojo in Original 7.
Or will happen in the next game, but it's,
I have to go back and look.
Inevitably, the mad scientist trope is exactly that. He gets to the point where his creation takes him out.
And good riddance when that moment comes.
Yeah, I hate Hojo. So like this whole situation plays out, and then Hojo tells him this, the captain like hangs up, right? And then I'm sitting here wondering like, okay, so Hojo clearly knows that there's an experiment going on, right? And the creatures are named the experimental whatever.
Uh-huh.
How on earth did these things how did they get to the ship? How did they get on the ship?
Well, Hojo kind of seems surprised when he hears from the captain about this.
The fiends have merged with some of the passengers. Tattooed men in black robes. I contacted public security, but they said this falls under your jurisdiction.
An intriguing development, this new mutation.
Yeah, he does, but like
It's almost like they acted out of their own volition.
Either that or like, later on when we get into the big fight down in the cargo hold, there's a whole bunch of shipping containers in there. So I'm wondering if like Hojo was shipping these things from one place to another and they escaped somehow, right? And caused chaos on the ship, or how did these things even get around?
But they were like flying in from the air.
They could have been, right? Or they could have been in the cargo hold and like busted out the
Maybe.
windows and flown on top of it. Because they're in the middle of the ocean. Like, where did they come from?
There's definitely a lot of mystery behind
Yeah.
what's going on here. And since it's not in the original game, like this is story stuff that's totally new. This is Rebirth stuff, right? It makes us wonder what's going on. And it's one of those questions I hope they answer, which if they don't, I'm not going to be very happy with that.
Well, they have to be setting us up for the payoff where Hojo gets like just annihilated by his own creation. So,
and I do want to point out here too, we got to pause for just a quick second. I think they did a really good job casting James. I don't know how to say his last name either. It's S-I-E. James C or James Psy. I'm not really sure. But they cast him to play the part of Hojo, and I think he's fantastic in this role.
How I envy your opportunity to be present for this epochal event. At the very least, I must harvest a sample of its DNA.
I did look at his resume. I looked at his IMDb, and he does have a pretty solid list of credits on his resume as well. But he doesn't have as many as I assumed he did, because I thought he did a really, really good job here. He's definitely, because Hojo's unique. He's a caricature in himself, right? He's this mad scientist caricature.
Is what he is.
Yeah, he's a trope. But you still have to be able to put yourself in the character's shoes and portray that in like a believable fashion, even while being over the top. So it's tricky to play a caricature well and believably in that way. And I think he does a really good job. So bravo to James. Wanted to give him a shout out there. Now, after Hojo's maniacal laugh, which James did great, right? Then we go back to Tifa and Cloud, who are on the ship, and we hear Barret's voice downstairs. And so they're like fighting, and they go downstairs and they see him fighting in the distance and running off. And we're basically trying to catch up to Barret at this point. And we fight more monsters as we make our way through like the lower levels of the ship, maybe the cargo area. And in those fights, that's where I really used the soothing breeze, like enemy skill that I had on my materia from chapter 4. I like totally used that for this, by the way. I was totally a fan of that. But anyway, and then we start to see some more unique enemies who weren't seen on the ship in the original game. And then we see like more fiends merging with more robe guys. And basically we're just trying to get to Barret and fight through these fiends. And one other quick thing that is interesting to me during this sequence is that while we're fighting and going down these levels in the ship, we're passing a bunch of injured crewmen along the way. And almost all of them say something to us as we pass by.
Those men, they fuse with those things. They're not human. The ship, it's in your hands now. Captain Titov, is he still alive? The men were robes. And then the fiends came. Don't let them near the engine. The fiends were headed for the engine room.
Which does a couple of things, right? First, it shows us that they're not dead, which makes the scene less serious, and it's not so M-rated because it's a T-rated game, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of keeps it in the T-rated space that these people are like speaking to us because they're not dead, right? We're not just seeing bodies splattered around of dead people, which I appreciate because I actually feel bad when innocent, nameless NPC background characters die, even though I know they're not real. So it made me happy.
Yeah.
But then it's also actually a carryover from the original game. So in the original game, after the stowaway alarm has been sounded and we start fighting off enemies, we consistently pass by injured crewmen on the ground, and most of them talk to us if you try to talk to them, just like they do in Rebirth, although not all of them, which is also similar because there are a few that don't. But then Rebirth strays from the original path yet again for a few moments when Tifa and Cloud meet up with Barret, right? So they find Barret, he's down there, he's shooting fiends, he's trying to protect 5 robe guys, which again, I would argue is partially because he needs to follow them in order to complete his mission, but I think mostly because his heart is humongous and he feels this honest sympathy for the zombie guys, and he doesn't think they deserve to die. Like, he sees them as individual humans.
Been busting my ass trying to keep these guys alive. They won't fight back.
He's like risking his life to fight for these zombie dudes, right? So I say that's a heart thing.
Yeah, and I think this is where you and I disagree. I mean, I'm not saying Barret doesn't have a big heart. I think he does. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think this is literally just these guys are his ticket to getting his mission done, and he needs to protect them. But I also think, remember when Cloud and Tifa hear him, but they don't see him yet?
Yeah.
And he said, and I don't remember the exact lines, but it's something like, come get you some, or something like that.
Come and get it, assholes!
He's having a ball shooting these things, right? So like...
Yeah, well, he's not afraid. He doesn't back down to a challenge.
I think it's half like he needs to protect these things for his mission, but also like he's enjoying annihilating these fiends. I don't think it has anything to do with like he cares whether they're not...
But he's standing in between the robe guys and the fiends.
Yeah, because he's got to save them.
Yeah, but why? Why does he have to save them?
Because those are his meal ticket. That's his mission. He's got to follow them.
He's got to follow them, but there's clearly more than just those 5. So who cares?
Well, on the ship, there's only those 5. And that actually brings up something else that I found interesting, and maybe you have an idea of why this is. So you mentioned right before this scene, you're going through there and we start seeing a bigger diversity of enemies, right? Of fiends.
Yeah, yeah.
There were several in there that were like black in color, and then they have like the bright lines on them. They kind of look like Tron Legacy type things.
Yeah.
These were the exact same ones
from the lab
that were in several other of Hojo's labs.
Right. So this is part of the mystery, right? They're clearly alluding to these are Hojo's creations merging with people who have been also affected by Hojo.
Yeah, and those things, they don't fly.
Oh, yeah. Like, how did they get there?
Yeah. So that's what, to me.
Huh. Okay.
And mind you, we're now in the cargo hold where all of this is happening, right?
So, but were there any open boxes? Like any open cargo?
I mean, there were. Like, at the end of the scene, after we get through with the big boss fight at the end of this thing, you can see there are some severely busted, all kinds of stuff down there. And of course, that could have just been a result of that fight. But I feel like what happened here is these things were actually in those containers on that ship, and they were moving them from one Shinra facility to another, and they somehow busted out.
I think that's possible.
I feel like that's what happened here because, again,
interesting.
You're right. Those flying things, you could make the argument like they could have come from anywhere because they fly.
Right. Like the first ones you fight, you're right, they fly.
But the ones down in that cargo hold,
the ones down below don't fly.
That are the same as the ones we saw in his other labs and don't fly. They had to have been on that ship already. Unless something happened that we didn't see, like a Shinra helicopter came and dropped these things off on the, maybe, but we never saw that scene, right? So like they had to be on that ship already and they busted out. Whether it was intentional or not, I don't know, but I'm just like.
I think it's an interesting theory, but then it also brings up more questions that they better as heck answer, right? Like.
Well, yeah, but it does make sense that if that is a Shinra ship, and it's moving from like one Shinra facility where they just fired a cannon that broke an ancient treaty.
Yeah.
And it's going to this Costa del Sol. Like, okay, what is over there? Does Hojo have another lab on that island or what?
Or was it intentional that they break free on the ship?
Right.
Like what are the motivations? Who is pulling the strings?
Did someone let them go?
What was intended? Did something go differently than intended? Like, yeah, there's a lot of questions. That's a really interesting theory. I'm glad you brought that up. I still think Barret has a huge heart.
I think he does too. I just don't think he cares about the robes. But I did.
I just think you don't care about the robes.
I don't care about them either. But I did like him like getting all excited, like shooting the enemies when we heard him. And then we ran to see what he was doing. And we're like.
And he's just like wailing on everything.
He's just blowing up there. He has fun. Like
Barret's great.
I think he's the only one that legitimately enjoys what he's doing in this game.
Everybody's kind of doing it because they have to.
But like, and he obviously is on a mission, but he's having a good time with it.
Yeah.
Because I think he's also one of those people that like, he realizes that he could go at any time. So like, if he's going to go out, he's going to go out in a blaze of glory, one way or the other.
Yeah, that seems to describe Barret.
His voice actor's phenomenal.
Oh, he is awesome.
Like, just amazing.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head now, but I should because he's very, very, very talented.
I know, but he's probably found these videos by now and he's like,
I don't know. We're not that big a deal.
What does it call that thing that if you go like 6 relations out, you can hit the whole planet?
Oh, yeah, like Kevin Bacon.
6 degrees of separation or 7 degrees of separation. Something like that, whatever it is, yeah.
So we do see Barret. He's having a good time shooting these things, trying to protect the robe guys because he cares about them. And then we see, at closer glance at this point, this is also different from the original game. We see that one of the robe guys actually isn't a robe guy at all.
Yes.
Right? So it's the ninja. It's Yuffie disguised in a robe. And the captain then appears with his gun, and he's aiming his gun at the black robes because he sees them as the problem here. He's made the connection that...
Which they are.
Which, yeah.
To be fair, right?
Well, I would argue that the experimental whatevers are the bigger problem. The robe guys were totally fine until those things showed up, right? So I would put the blame on them. But there is something to be said that if the robe guys weren't on the ship, then probably this whole thing may not have happened, even though we don't know why, right?
Right, exactly.
So he's got this gun aimed, and he pulls the trigger and he shoots one, right? So another black robe bites the dust by bullet.
Uh-huh.
We've seen this before. And that's at the point where Yuffie throws off her robe and she yells like, "Don't shoot me," or she yells not to shoot her. And then it's actually Cloud that pulls her out of the way to safety as the captain continues to then shoot every single last robe guy. And
when I saw that Yuffie was in there, remember, like, he shoots one of them. And then do you remember what she says when the first one goes down?
Holy shiz.
Something like that, yeah.
Holy shit.
What would have been awesome is that the captain would have popped her next. It would have been epic. Now, I know we can't do that, right? And it's rated T.
It's rated T.
But had that happened, I would have been like, yes.
Well, so I would have been okay with that in the original game because I thought she was the worst in the original game. Like, I could not handle her.
I still don't like her, even in this game.
She grows on me.
Hold it, you spiky-haired jerk face!
But at this point, like in the chapter, I didn't have a lot of investment in her either. But I had also played the intermission or integrate whatever DLC, which is totally with her. Can you imagine?
I still haven't played that
Just
yet.
shoot her. Oh my gosh. But no, it's Cloud that pulls her out of the way to safety, so she didn't die. Sorry, Ernest. And then remember the captain's reaction? You could tell he kind of feels bad, but he's doing what he thinks is best. He says he had to.
I had to. For the sake of my passengers and crew.
And there were two things that stood out to me about this like sequence of events. The first one is it immediately brought to my mind that scene where the sheriff is aiming the gun at Sephiroth and just
and he doesn't
cannot
pull the trigger.
Whereas this captain didn't hesitate, blew one of their brains out.
Yeah.
Yuffie cusses and loses it. They get her out of the way, and then the captain just obliterates the. I mean, he would have made Barret proud with what he just. If it wasn't for the fact that Barret was trying to protect these things, right?
Yeah.
But like just decisive action, right? That is the captain right there. Like I was like, wow, this guy just didn't even like.
But that's like another example of the Rebirth writers putting some gray in here, right? Like, is this an act of murder on the captain's part, or is this justified heroism, right? You could argue either way, right? But they pose the question here, which I think is really interesting. But yeah, we don't look at him as being like a villain. We can at least understand from his standpoint.
But it poses that age-old question, right? Just look around the world today. Yeah. And by the way, this has been going on for millennia, but it's like one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, right? And that's a core theme of this game because Avalanche, they consider themselves freedom fighters, but Shinra calls them eco-terrorists, right? So like the whole thing ties in together.
That's true. But then I think there is an objective reality that they also stay on track of. Like there are certain things that are considered acts of evil, just like I would consider them acts of evil in like real life. Right. I don't think it's like there's all this moral equivalence in reality. I think there's like actual evil, like there's perspective differences, but I wouldn't say that like, oh, that person being a terrorist is just misunderstood. Like there are actual evil things that some people do that they're evil, right? Like it's not just like a moral subjectivism to me. Like I think a lot of people are playing that these days that I just, well, we won't get into world issues, but I do like that while there is some gray in, you know, is this person good or bad? Because I think the multidimensional morality is interesting. I think they still do a good job of saying like these acts are unacceptable in life, period. These acts are not. And then there's still gray within that.
That's what Hojo's for.
Right. Exactly.
Hojo's the illustration of that, whereas the captain is like, you could go either way, right? Depending on how you're looking at things.
And moreover, I mean, none of this stuff with like the black robes and the captain shooting stuff, none of that, as you might imagine, is in the original game. In fact, similar to the Mithril Mine, the black robes don't appear on the ship at all. And I'm pretty sure they don't merge with monsters at any point, at least not in this point of the game. I've got to look back to be sure, but we don't even meet a ship captain.
Right.
Just like Rhonda, just like Broden, Captain Titov is created exclusively for Rebirth. And it makes sense because we're only on the ship for a hot second in the original game. But then what happens next is directly from the original game, although not in the exact same way. So in Rebirth, the dead robe guy corpses.
Look at the dead guys!
They suddenly like freakishly start crawling toward, I guess it's Jenova's arm lying on the ground for some reason.
So two things that came to mind. One of them was, you remember when we had this discussion about the robe guys getting shot in the head by, was it Sung that did it?
Sung shot him in the Mithril Mine.
Yeah. And of course,
or in the chest.
They didn't reanimate there, right? And then also remember in the very beginning of the Mithril Mine chapter, part of the thing collapses and they go down and then Barrett's like, oh, let me go check on them or whatever. I used to work in a mine.
Yeah, they've never come back to life. You know?
Right. So this is the first time we see the black robes reanimate, but you're right. It's around something. And I don't know whether it's an arm or whatever, but it's clearly a piece of Jenova.
It's okay. So the reason I think it's supposed to be Jenova's arm, like, because you really can't tell in Rebirth, I would say, which I think is actually a problem.
It looks like a bandaged appendage of some kind.
Right. But okay, in the original game, so I actually went back and watched this scene in the original because I'm like, what is going on here? Right. And in the original game, it's in this scene that Cloud's party encounters this like twitching tentacle type thing, and they call it the arm of Jenova. and then it vanishes after you defeat this end boss, right? Which in Rebirth, I really think that this Jenova body part thing needed a better explanation, right? Because I don't think it's explained. I don't think we see it, right? Like, I don't think they should have at least given us a visual shot of what the heck this thing is.
It's not well explained, but I did kind of put my own story together just by the sequence of events here, which is like that piece of Jenova didn't just accidentally end up on this ship, because that was part of Hojo's experiment.
You can also argue that Sephiroth brought it and just set it there. But either way, if it's significant, we should know what it is or see it before these rogue guys try to go after it. Like, I feel like just from a filmmaking perspective, there was no simple intercut of just that like Jenova arm or tentacle or whatever. Yeah. So you never see it or acknowledge that it's even in the room with you, I don't think, until like the rope guys grab it
until
and turn
they
it
go
into
for
whatever.
It. Yeah.
So you're like, wait, what is happening? And like you could even like assume that's just a piece of one of those experimental fiend or whatever that didn't vanish into crystal dust, because they kind of look like that. I don't know. Now, granted, the reason it stood out that was confusing is because the game has done a pretty good job with intercutting the correct things to make things clear in the story up until this point. I just thought this was just that we just needed one simple clarifying visual. You could even make it a verbal clarification, like, oh, what's that thing? Or, whatever, even though that would be on the nose and lamer than just a quick visual shot. But I don't know. I was like, what is that? I had to go back to the original game where Cloud literally says Jenova's arm.
For some reason, the minute I saw them clamoring for it and I saw that it was a bandaged appendage, I was like, that's a piece of Jenova.
You just knew. Okay.
I just knew. And of course, because
you barely see it. So how would you know?
Well, because when I saw them like go for it, it looked like a bandaged appendage. And I was like, why else would they jump for it?
But didn't you have to consciously think about it? Did you have to consciously mull it over to know what it was? Or did you just know?
Well, I shouldn't say it that way. I saw them all go to grab the thing. And then, of course, they merge, right? And they turn into the boss.
Okay.
And that's when it dawned on me that that's what that was.
Yeah, that this is like flurry of purple magic.
Yeah, it become Jenova Emergent, right? So like that tells me, oh, whatever that thing was obviously a part of Jenova. Otherwise, how would they become Jenova? But it immediately made me like, oh, this whole thing was set up by Hojo.
Was it set up by Hojo or was it set up by Sephiroth?
I feel like it was set up by Hojo.
I don't actually know. I'm asking a question.
Well, I don't either. And the fact that Sephiroth shows up a little bit later is kind of like, well, I don't know. But I also feel like it can't be just a coincidence that there are all these fiends, including these ones that are merging with people, and this piece of Jenova all on the ship at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that Sephiroth snuck all that stuff onto the ship. You could make the argument that he snuck the piece, the appendage on there or whatever by itself. But it seemed like
this is a guy who can like lift a snake out of a lake and throw him on a pole by like using the Jedi Force.
Right. So like,
who knows what he can do?
So like this had to be Hojo's experiment. And also keep in mind that this entire time we've had several situations, maybe like 2 or 3 at this point, where the party was unaware of it, but Shinra knew very well where they were. Right. So like it would make sense that Shinra knew where they were. They knew they were on this ship. And
which is kind of funny that if you think about it, because it's a Shinra ship and they're like blatantly riding on the enemy's ship, like not trying to disguise themselves.
And they got cameras everywhere. As a matter of fact, when the captain's talking to Hojo, there's like live feeds coming into this massacre going on the boat. Right. So like
there's a lot of like ridiculous stuff like that.
All kinds of ridiculous stuff.
The lack of security at the parade, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But then it all congeals into this like Jenova Emergent, and then we get into like this hell house of another like boss fight going on.
Another boss fight
in the cargo hold of this ship.
Yeah, and it's a final punctuation mark to this chapter, right? And actually before Jenova Emergent shows up, we actually see Sephiroth like cuddling that Jenova body part, and then he like introduces Jenova.
They say she's a monster, that she can peer inside you into the very depths of your soul, that she can become those you hate, those you fear, those you love. And they call her Jenova.
We watch the characters watch this unfold. So the purple magic and all this stuff, and Sephiroth appears. And I actually couldn't tell at that moment if Barret and Tifa also saw Sephiroth himself at that moment, because sometimes Cloud's the only one who sees him.
I think Cloud was the only one that saw him again, and specifically it's because the end scene when we actually defeat the boss.
Okay, yeah, because they definitely react to something. They see something, But I don't know if they're actually seeing Sephiroth or just...
No, I think they're seeing this thing form in front of them and are like, oh my God.
And that's enough?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be...
I mean, that would shock me if you saw that thing like just forming out of purple.
Well, they definitely see what it forms into, but before it takes that form, they're like reacting to something. Are they just reacting to maybe the purple magic?
Yeah, if I was looking at that, I would be like, what the heck is that? And then all of a sudden, we walk into like the boss fight, which is like another ridiculous boss fight.
Yeah, I was going to say, so tell me how the boss fight was for you. Because it was one of those multi-phase fights where you had to take out different tentacles, you had to focus on different body parts, which I know from our last discussion, you're not a giant fan.
No, I wasn't, but this one actually was okay because this one I just used the strategy of like, I would play as Cloud up close and beat the thing up, and then whenever it switched to a scenario where like, it was either tentacles or remember at one point there was something that was like shooting like laser beams or something from the wall, from the pillars. I don't remember exactly anymore. Yeah. I would just switch to Barret because Barret was a ranged character and it was fine. There was one point where like the thing was shooting lasers out of it, kind of like the Ultima and then Ifrit fight and like they're battling each other and there are lasers flying all over the place. It was like, just like that.
Whoa, acid drip.
Yeah, but in the cargo hold. So the fight was actually not bad. It was actually okay. I didn't lose. I didn't wipe out. It was great. And yeah, it was super intense. The music was like...
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned the music because it truly was an amazing piece of work. I mean, it's crazy. The compositions that we get to hear in this game. And I think a lot of times we don't even consciously know how great they are because our attention is on like trying to beat a boss or something like that. But if you actually take a step back and listen, this piece and so many others, it's an amazing piece of music.
Oh yeah, yeah. And what's even better is when it's that, but it's in the background. Like you can hear it and you can sense it. It's not like in 16 when you fought Titan and it was like Black Sabbath on an acid trip and like the music was like right in front of you.
More ambient.
Right, and you were like, whoa, calm down.
It's not trying to draw attention to itself. It's just trying to add to the tone of the game. And that's like the sweet spot for a composer in video games and film too.
I think so too, yeah.
Because usually you actually don't want to draw the attention, the conscious attention of somebody who's playing the game or watching the movie or whatever. There are moments where it's okay to like break that rule. But if you can like play a scene and then just like you're totally engulfed in the tone that was intended by the composer, then the composer's doing their job really well. And then if you go back and actually listen to the song, then you're like, oh my gosh, the way they use the instrumentation, like it's just so good.
A perfect example is like Yitzhak Perlman's rendition of the theme song from Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Like you hear it and you're not paying conscious attention to it. And obviously the movie's going on.
And that's a great score.
But then you hear it outside of that context and you're like, wow, this piece is just
amazing
on another level. Like
totally. And that's like I said, that's like the sweet spot. And it's unique for Rebirth too, because they have to use compositions that have already been done and just reimagine them. And I just think they do it flawlessly. I have zero complaints with almost every track in this game, in any Final Fantasy game. There's a couple, like I told you about Kyrie's theme song. I don't want to like punch myself in the face. Otherwise, like this track is so good. And I'll also say like this boss fight for me, I thought it was a pretty fun fight. Like it was challenging, but it wasn't aggravating, right? So it hit the right note for me. I think this was actually the first time I had to use a Phoenix down. No, maybe I used one with Midgard somewhere. I don't know. But I did lose Tifa. She was knocked out. And I did get to try out, like, I got to use some synergy moves with Cloud and Tifa and limit breaks. I summoned Titan. I tried Soothing Breeze, but it got interrupted too much to be super useful. And I should probably point out, like, we were locked into Tifa, Barret, and Cloud, and I gravitated more toward Cloud and Barret, and I'm switching constantly like I usually do. But yeah, somebody pointed out, thankfully, and thank you, that Tifa has like this awesome combo of like 8 hits that you just have to learn how to use her and build her up. And I just have been a really lazy Tifa fighter. So for all the Tifa fighters out there, props to you. I'm sorry I suck at Tifa and just never put the effort in.
Oh yeah, Tifa and Red can wreck some stuff, right? If you know how to use them and you build them up.
I'm too lazy of a fighter, I think.
But like I said, I play Cloud because I like being up close and hack and slashing. And then Barret is just because like, hey, you need a range.
Just range.
You need range sometimes, right? So he's like a perfect balanced character for that. But yeah, the fight was excellent. I enjoyed it. And then you see the devastation that got wreaked on that cargo hold. It's just like a bomb blew up in there.
You're like, how did the ship not sink? Like, we're still afloat somehow? Like, what in the world? Well, don't you think the boss looked freaking rad?
Oh, yeah.
Like that second stage where the multiple arms pop out of him, and we can assume, or her, I guess, you assume that those arms are like representing the robe guys
that it
had merged with, right? Which is super creepy.
And it seemed like every evolution of it, it was like just when you thought like, okay, it's already like expanded itself to its max and then just like even more, and then like eyeballs open up and all kinds of weird, you know.
And then they animated in some like cut scenes of the party landing like close to final hits, which was also kind of cool to watch. Anyway, I just thought it was a good fight. I liked the fight, and it's actually similar in the original game. So this does happen on the ship in the original game, but the boss is obviously far less detailed and actually looks somewhat different, like same kind of gist, but differently imagined. Like there's no arms popping out of it, if I remember right.
You can only do so much with them polygons back then.
Right.
I mean,
right.
They were very limited. Like now you can do anything.
That's true. Like Cloud's actual arm was a polygon, right? Like,
yeah, he was like swinging a wood block at you. Yeah. You know, it was a different era.
That's like totally what it was too. And like obviously there's no robe guys rushing after Jenova's arm, but there is an arm, and there is Sephiroth who does turn into like Jenova, this form or whatever, which you can see the inspiration for the Rebirth boss, but it's obviously a modern evolution. And once the fight is over, so I love this, especially knowing that the game was not created in English first, because it gives a lot of credit to the localization team. So once we defeat Jenova, the boss then like poofs back into Sephiroth, and Sephiroth says, Cloud,
don't let her fool you.
Then Tifa then puts a hand on Cloud's shoulder, which is like showing support, to which Cloud responds,
I'm no fool.
And then the threat is neutralized, and then the ship sails off to Costa del Sol, and the next chapter, Chapter 6, starts, and the name of Chapter 6 is Fool's Paradise. So you see the connection? Cloud, don't let her fool you. I'm no fool. Fool's Paradise. I don't know. I thought that was great.
Yeah, so that's the part at the end where Sephiroth pops back up and he says, you know, don't let her fool you.
Do you think he was talking about Jenova, or do you think he was talking about Tifa?
That's the thing. So they don't tell you, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's actually a bit of both, right?
Maybe.
I can't tell, like, obviously which one it is, but if you notice in that scene, you're right. She puts her hand on his shoulder, but it doesn't appear to me that they saw that last interaction.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, when he says, I'm no fool, the reaction in Tifa's face is almost one like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think they see him at that point.
I think he's just seeing it in his mind, right? Which again gives me the whole like
schizophrenia,
Stutter Island vibe, right?
Yeah.
Because remember, we start off with like this like awesome, fun half, and then it gets super intense, and then in typical like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth fashion, it ends on to me a hilarious note.
Yeah.
Because he says, I'm no fool, right? And then the captain comes on the intercom.
Yeah. Everything's good.
He says, the disturbance has been resolved.
I'm happy to announce that the earlier disturbance has been resolved. All passengers are once again free to move about the vessel as they please. We will be arriving as scheduled at Costa del Sol in the morning. On behalf of the entire Shinra 8 crew, we wish you a peaceful night's sleep and hope you wake refreshed and ready for fun in the sun.
And I'm sitting here like, you just
like,
had
a tone shift.
You
right?
just had this like god awful thing happen in the cargo hold of your ship.
Well, he just shot 5 dudes, like,
and just gets on the intercom and is like,
well, that It's over.
The disturbance is over. We're going to be there on schedule. Hope y'all have fun in the sun. Everyone sleep restfully or peacefully. And I'm like, how can anyone sleep peacefully after what just happened on this ship? And I was like, this is absolutely like peak tongue in cheek.
Do you think it's intentional to just like blatantly?
Oh, it's absolutely intentional.
Like, you don't think that they're just not sensitive to like how intense it was and how unrealistic it is to just get on an intercom and be
There's
like,
no way.
So you think, are they trying to be funny then in your perspective?
Oh yeah. With all the other detail they put into this, like there's no way that the person at the end was like, okay, boss fight is over. We're going to phone it in from here. Like, no, this was absolutely intentional. And it was exactly to catch the attention of the people who are paying attention to like the severity of what just happened. And like, did this guy just say that like, hey, have a peaceful rest and be ready for fun in the sun? Like I realized that if you paid for this cruise and you're like, okay, well, I already paid for this. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my vacation. Sure. But you also just traumatized an entire boat. So like,
right. But like, I will say, and I can't get into this too much because it comes in later chapters and I don't even think you've played some of them. Like, while I think sometimes the tone switches are intentional, like they're trying to be funny, tongue in cheek or whatever. There are a few moments where the tone is super mixed up and unclear and I think too muddy to be executed well.
That's true. But here's my thought, right?
So you got to lean 100% in.
If you were going to phone it in, so to speak, there was no reason for you to include that captain's announcement at the end.
I don't think it was a phone in. I would say it's more of just like the writer's not understanding what it really does to the player when you do that.
You could have just left it out. You could have just like ended at the end of that fight, have Cloud say, I'm no fool.
That's true.
Close curtain, drop curtain, whatever. Move into the entry of the next one saying Fool's Errand or Fool's whatever it was.
Fool's Paradise.
Fool's Paradise. Yeah. You could have just gone straight into that. You didn't even need to have that closing segment. Like, what value is it for the captain to tell the people on the boat, hey.
Well, I think that's their way of trying to transition us to the next tone. Like, that's their transition, but it's so.
You literally could have dropped the mic after I'm no fool and ended it right there.
But then going to hula dancers after I'm no fool, that's even more blatant. So to me, it's like they're trying to smooth over the transition, but I just feel like it's still a little intense. I don't know. I have to go back. It didn't bother me like consciously that much. I'm just posing the question because in later chapters, once we get there was like, especially one scene in particular that I was like, the tone here is weird. And I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Am I supposed to feel sad? Am I supposed to laugh? Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes they get it wrong is what I'm saying.
I thought of it also in the context of like, you remember a couple months ago when the door like popped off the airplane mid-flight or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
It was like an Alaska Airlines flight or something.
Yeah.
I thought about that situation where like something very bad happens. The captain on the ship, their job is to remain calm and to always project calm.
Why is he announcing, hey, there's an emergency on the ship? Everybody panic.
And also not to get sued, right? So like think about it. When that door popped off that airplane, I am almost certain the captain came on the intercom and said, there's been an incident. Everybody remain calm. Keep buckled in. Put on your oxygen mask. Like he had to like tell them, hey, there's an emergency, but keep calm.
Yeah, but there was a door off the airplane that everyone could see.
Yeah,
in this case, he woke people up to things they couldn't even see. It was happening in the halls. It wasn't happening in their rooms.
I know, but that's one example. But I mean, there's plenty of others where like an engine malfunctions, right? And so like maybe the passengers can't see that, but he's going to have to take some kind of like emergency maneuvers or whatever to land the plane. He has to warn them like, hey, there's been something. Now, he needed to get the military people up there.
Can you not just get on the intercom and say, attention,
sure,
all passengers, can military please report to blah, blah, blah?
Sure, he could have done that.
Doesn't have to sound an alarm. And
everybody else would have been like, why is he asking for the military to go to the top of the ship?
Yeah, which is better for them to wonder than to think that they're being eaten by monsters.
I think he did the right thing, which is like, there's an emergency situation, stay in your quarters, military go to the top deck, does two things.
But then also say, remain calm, we have this under control. Like give some kind of...
He has to say that because you know that a lot of those people are just going to lose, like...
Yeah, so say that we have this under control. Even if you don't, it's messaging. It's messaging, Ernest. It's messaging.
I mean, sure.
Because you want to be honest, but you also want to like give them hope. Anyway, whatever. We're going off on this way too long.
He should have just been like, run for your miserable lives. And like...
Every man for himself.
Yeah, that's what he should have done.
Yeah.
That would have made it a roller coaster of a chapter. But at least he tried. I think at the end, net, they portrayed him as a pretty good captain.
I like him.
regardless of how it panned out.
And what did you think overall about the chapter in general? I mean, we've gone through the whole thing.
Oh, I loved it. The tournament was great, again, except for, Regina.
I think you would have beat her on like the 4th try.
I probably would have if I had like taken the time to reconstruct the deck and do all this stuff.
But you like to move fast.
I like to move faster through the game.
See, I don't mind taking a few tries.
And of course, Red's performance was phenomenal. And I realize it wasn't a casino boat, and I'm just saying that. But like,
oh, it feels like one.
You could have had like a performance of some kind, whether it was Andrea and his like Honeybee group. They could have been on tour, right?
A reprise? They could have done like a sequel to the Honeybee Inn dance? Oh,
something,
missed
right?
Opportunity, indeed.
There could have been anything on here. But I think, like I said, at the end of the day, it was great. You have the whole part about the Queen's Blood tournament, and that was great, right? It is what it is.
Right.
But when you get to the sections, like the second half of it, where the fiends attack, and then there's the soul suckers, and all this stuff happens.
Yeah.
Each one of those is bigger than what you're looking at. Like, you're looking at an encapsulated event that happened in the third act of this chapter. But what it really is it's one bead in a necklace about this entire story of Sephiroth, right?
So I just want to make sure that we get the necklace
exactly
at the end, you know what I mean?
So I'm always trying to figure out, like, what was this trying to tell me, right? So, like, I've got a piece of Jenova here, an arm, a tentacle.
And what do you think it was?
What I think it's trying to tell me is the psychosis.
Of who?
Of Cloud.
Of Cloud, okay.
Right, like, so there's a psychosis happening.
So you could argue there's psychosis happening to a couple characters in this game.
Yeah, but my point is, like, there's definitely a reimagining of telling the original story, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that was, like, part of the purpose here. That's why it's remake and then rebirth, and then I don't know what the next one, I don't know if they've named the third segment yet or not, but
I don't know. There's a lot of speculation.
Because you also have to remember, like, the robed guys are technically what Cloud is walking towards.
Right, we think. Yeah, we think he's going to meet the same fate as the robe guys.
And the thing is, he may not be going down that exact same road. He could be going down a completely different one where psychosis is actually what takes him, not like the deleterious effects of like the Mako poisoning or whatever it is, right? So there's an entire another story happening here. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what are they trying to tell me? And I feel like it's one of these things where, like, again, the whole setup of like why Rufus wants Sephiroth off. And there was even a reference to Sephiroth. It was basically something like Sephiroth was a mistake of Shinra.
He's an unsavory relic of our past, and I want him gone.
Almost like Shinra's original sin.
Yeah.
And it's all tied to Hojo, by the way.
Oh, I know, because I've played Crisis Core and all that.
Right.
Like,
so you start putting all these little pieces together. And again, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to tell a story here of like something that's bigger than just the eco-terrorist Mako Jenova story.
Oh, for sure.
I think they're trying to actually weave in psychosis into this thing. And what that could end up at later on could be something ridiculous, right? Because think about it. If you have...
Well, and I'm so interested because I've beat the game. You're in chapter 6. There is like some crazy stuff coming down the pike that you haven't seen that kind of plays into what you're talking about, that we are definitely going to have to discuss. Some of it I liked and some of it I did not like at all.
Yeah, let me phrase it a different way. If I had to stop right now, right, and I could not play anything else from here on out, and I had to make up the rest of the story, what I would be imagining is something where this psychosis is slowly gripping Cloud as we're going through this story. So like his mind is experiencing what the robe guys are experiencing physically. I almost feel like what we're going to end up is in a scenario where all of this is in Cloud's mind, the entire story.
Interesting. I can't say anything.
And it's not just because he's making it up, but it has to do with the fact that Jenova and obviously Sephiroth have a grip on his mind and are part of that psychosis. So it's almost like they're propping him up and keeping him from having this situation that the robe guys are for some other purpose that they're orchestrating. But again, because of the type of entities they are, their grip is mental.
Okay.
It's not physical in the physical world, right? So like, it's almost like there's an externally driven psychosis being pushed on him, but at the same time, they're propping him up.
Well, then while I'm on vacation next week, you have to keep playing because you need to see what's coming, because it is like, you just need to see it. You just need to see it. Ernest,
I'm working on it.
Get those fingers moving.
Because it just feels like if I were the writers here, if I was Square Enix and I was going to reimagine this story, the area where I think I could have the most impact is somehow making this entire thing a psychotic episode.
Well, I think that's a really interesting idea, but that's all I can say about it.
Well,
because I beat the game.
Yeah. Well, you beat this section of it. You haven't beat the game.
That's true. I've beaten part 2 of a big 3-part. Yep.
The game is at the conclusion of the 3rd.
Touché. That is true.
Yeah.
And like you, I mean, I actually really liked Chapter 5. I loved Chapter 5, actually, because up through this point, like, I'm a fan of every chapter. I thought Chapter 5 fit right in there. It was lighthearted. Incredible. I really liked playing Queen's Blood. I won the trophy. Oh, yay for me. I also thought the end boss was fun, right? And then I thought the character moments were fun. The play was diverse. It was over the top. It was stupidly fun, as I say, with each chapter. I think it was a good chapter. And as far as like how they changed the sequences from the original game, so the changes here in this chapter and the chapters in front of it, they actually don't bother me yet. Right? So I actually think that they made the story better in a lot of ways. So at this point in the game, like, I'm all in with the changes because they're not these blatant changes. They're more of reimagined interpretations of what the original game was. And I'm not somebody who's like, you have to be married to exactly the story that was original 7. I'm not that way. But I do feel like you have to keep that in mind and keep that fan base in mind and keep like the story in mind and move forward as you're doing changes and reimaginings, right?
Absolutely. And I have this feeling that the story that was told in original 7 wasn't the full story to begin with.
Well, and I'd be okay with that, like it not being the full story.
I feel like they wrote a story.
Because there's gaps in the story in 7, like, let's be honest.
Yeah, I feel like they wrote a story, but then they were limited by the technology of their time.
Right.
And so they had to tell it as best they could with the tools available to them. And I think that today, obviously, they have vastly more tools and technology available to them where they can actually tell the full story.
So how would you feel, just a totally out there, pulling out of the air question, how would you feel if, like in the 3rd installment or the 2nd installment or whatever, they take it in a totally different direction, like veer into a totally different territory?
As long as it was something that was awesome, I would be okay with it.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, like,
I think I'm in the same place, but it has to be awesome.
Yeah, if it's just like some, hey, we're going to spin it some different way and it's not awesome, I'd be like, well, what was the point? Like, you didn't.
So then my question would then be like, what do you think is awesome? So finish the game, dang it.
If it just turns out that like they spin it a slightly different, typical JRPG hero-heroine track, that's not going to be the payoff people want.
Okay, I think that's a good place to leave it. What do you think?
For sure.
Okay, that's going to do it for this episode of the Final Fantasy Files. We can be found anywhere you get your podcasts. You can see the video version on either Spotify or YouTube. You can also follow us on our new dedicated YouTube channel, Final Fantasy Files, where you can lend your support by leaving a like or a comment for the algorithm. And of course, we love hearing your opinions. So please reach out, talk to us. We're very engaged with the community on that channel.
Absolutely. There's some of you that have some excellent opinions too that are coming in, the things we didn't even think about.
Good understandings that I didn't even know.
Tell your friends about us if they are into Final Fantasy or just JRPGs in general. And I'm sure at some point, Jolie and I will have to show up at some kind of like Final Fantasy event.
That would be awesome. I have to find a costume though. I gotta dress up as something.
Yeah. I think I would like to cosplay Barret.
Oh, you'd be good for cosplaying Barret. That'd be cool.
Barret's awesome.
See, I like Jill's outfit. I just don't think Jill's like the greatest character.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just wear a Jill outfit, whatever.
Or maybe I could do Hojo.
Hojo. Oh, wow.
That would really anger people.
Okay. That's very different than Barret, for sure.
Exact opposite.
Yeah. Please subscribe to us wherever you watch us or listen to us in order to hear future analyses of more Rebirth chapters. And we do need to play the Final Fantasy 16 DLC, by the way. We are going to do that. We're just a little tied up with this right now. And with that, walk tall, my friends.
And may the flames of the Phoenix protect your heart so that one of these soul suckers doesn't turn you into a necrotic entity.
I thought it was... Did you write it down? I always ask you this.
No.
I need a new sign off. So if anybody has any good ideas.
Yeah, every time you say Walk Tall, it reminds me of the Walking Tall movie, which was an excellent movie.
Walk Tall is from Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
Well, I want to quote Ignis, but all he does is, I discovered a new recipe. Like, that's not, I can't really sign off with, and with that, I've discovered a new recipe.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't work.
That would be hilarious.